Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, February 25th, 2022. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, we are packed. Derek Davison of the American Prestige podcast, Luke Savage of Jacobin, and Jayar Jackson of TYT Network's new show, The Watchlist. Meanwhile, Russian troops have entered Kyiv and are reportedly being met by mass mobilized Ukrainian resistance. Kyiv was under attack last night, and at least one residential building was struck by a rocket. And at least 137 Ukrainians have died. After invading, now Russia says they want to open up talks again to discuss Ukraine's potential neutral status, which to them I'd imagine would mean pro-Putin regime change, just a guess. This comes as Biden has announced new sanctions on Russian banking and exports in the wake of the invasion. He is still reserving the most intense sanction option, kicking Russia off SWIFT, the international system for global financial transactions. But speaking of Biden, here in the U.S., he has made his Supreme Court pick, and thankfully he resisted pressure from Clyburn and Lindsey Graham. Ketanji Brown Jackson will be the nominee. She was a past public defender and also represented Guantanamo Bay prisoners. Really, definitely the best candidate of the bunch, in my opinion. The 3 cops who stood by as George Floyd was murdered have been found guilty of violating Floyd's civil rights, federal charges. Florida's abhorrent Don't Say Gay bill has passed the House 69-47, and it's on its way to the Senate right now, so terrifying stuff. And lastly, the CDC is set to announce a significant loosening of mask restrictions today, or masking guidelines, I should say, as LA County has removed the indoor mask requirement if people prove they are vaccinated or show a negative test, I should say. All this and more on today's program. Welcome to this Casual Friday. It has been a long week without Sam. He'll be back on Monday, I know. I'm sure everybody misses him. I mean, I'll be happy. Because this has been an intense week. I could use somebody else talking, although Matt's been great in that regard for sure. We have a packed show, as I mentioned, 3 separate guests here to talk about Russia, Ukraine, and of course the Supreme Court a bit later on. But let's start with Russia as well and Biden's response. So Biden had a speech yesterday announcing additional sanctions towards Russia, and the issue of oil prices, gas prices, is going to be at the forefront of the continued war in Ukraine. And if Russia chooses to occupy, or the invasion, I should say, if Russia chooses to occupy and stay there for a long time and fighting breaks out, I mean, gas prices are going to continue to go in this direction. This was already an issue with the inflation caused by the supply chain bottlenecks due to COVID that Biden was already dealing with. Gas prices were beginning to go down. And now, of course, we hear that, and from reporting by Ken Klippenstein at The Intercept, there's been a burgeoning relationship between Saudi Arabia and Russia. And between the two of them, the top 3 producers of oil in the world are the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and Russia. So they have the ability to determine how oil prices are going to look. And with that relationship forging, that's bad news for the United States. So what does Biden do here? He doesn't really have an option in his mind. but to scold and then also beg the oil companies.
Come on, man.
As we respond, my administration is using the tools, every tool at its disposal to protect American families and businesses from rising prices at the gas pump. You know, we're taking active steps to bring down the cost, and American oil and gas companies should not exploit this moment to hike their prices to raise profits. You know, in our sanctions package, we specifically designed to allow energy payments to continue. We are closely monitoring energy supplies for any disruption. We've been coordinating with major oil producing and consuming countries toward our common interest to secure global energy supplies. We are actively working with countries around the world to elevate collective release from the strategic petroleum reserves of major energy consuming countries. And the United States will release additional barrels of oil as conditions warrant. I know this is hard and that Americans are already hurting. I will do everything in my power to limit the pain the American people are feeling at the gas pump. This is critical to me. But this aggression cannot go unanswered. If it did, the consequences for America would be much.
So he's not really doing everything in his power because we need to transition off of oil. I mean, I know that sounds rudimentary, but that's the case. And that wouldn't help in the immediate aftermath of Russia's Ukrainian invasion, but it will help us long term, because being beholden to oil in this regard is a national security issue. And it also does drive up prices. It allows for an impetuous prince like MBS, because he doesn't like Biden. It basically comes back to that. He had a better relationship with Trump and appreciated the fact that he sucked up to him, that he can forge a relationship with someone he has more in common with, like Putin. And then these two major power players in the oil and gas industry can team up, and the United States is basically left holding the bag. So this is going to hurt Biden domestically, but it's incredible weakness, in my opinion, to just go on the in front of the podium and basically beg oil and gas.
Please don't
to do something to help him out. Basically,
please don't capitalize on this, capitalists. Like nationalize the companies when they do end up gouging. Nationalize the companies. That's the immediate thing. Or institute price controls. There are government actions you can do, and you just need to do them. And then yes, of course, for the longer term, Green New Deal right now, not only to transition our economy, but also to put money into the workers that are going to build the next green economy for us. We need to be doing that stuff right now, particularly if there's economic downturns and stuff like that. It's time to be moving on that sort of investment, I think, now.
And these are the common sense things that Biden could do to fast track, do executive orders to move us towards green energy, price controls, as Matt mentioned. But he's not going to do those. The things he's more likely to do are what, and we'll play this a bit later in the program, Peter Doocy, that's the kid, right? God, yes, Steve is the dad. Peter Doocy is asking Jen Psaki, when are they going to reopen the Keystone XL pipeline? Is that a mistake for you to shut that down? Just be aware, and Tucker Carlson talked about in his program last night, domestic oil. We're not going to see the kind of response from centrist and right-wing media, and even center-left media, honestly, that we're talking about here.
Because they're oil shows. We're the giant oil-producing country, and this media has been formed by those sorts of forces.
Well, I mean, I will never forget during election coverage, you watch any of the major cable shows, and it's just brought to you by ExxonMobil or Politico's newsletter email blast brought to you by ExxonMobil. I mean,
even something as important, I think, is how we remember the 400 years, the 1619 Project, and whatever the individual issues with essays, that shit shouldn't have been sponsored by Shell. Right.
Yeah. So long story short, that just be aware that is going to be the anxious drumbeat of of
They're trying to
our
preempt
press
it.
and of other, centrist Democrats and right wingers throughout the country.
I mean, I think the oil industry is in panic mode because we're about to it's about to really hurt people. And like Biden, I mean, if Biden's already saying like, please don't gouge, I mean, that's probably more than he would be saying if they weren't anxious, I guess. I don't know. Like, we need to move the conversation a little bit forward. And I think like Biden is going to need to take some action on this stuff.
Yep. All right, folks, we are going to take a quick break. But first, just a reminder, we are doing 2 live shows. One at the end of March 26th at 2 p.m. here in Brooklyn at the Bell House. There are a couple of tickets available, not that many. Go and get your tickets if you want to come. And also, we were going to initially do it in January, Omicron, all of that. All-Star Cast at the Wilbur in Boston on May 15th, also at 2 p.m. H. John Benjamin, Larry Murphy, Natalie Scher, very special secret guest that will be revealed on the day of. So, and a special musical guest as well. 2 special secret guests. Check those out, guys. Go to our website and you should be able to get those tickets. We'd love to see you. Live shows are going to be amazing. Check that out. All right, we are going to head into a quick break, but when we come back, we will be joined by Derek Davison. We are back, and we are here with Derek Davison of the American Prestige podcast and the Foreign Exchanges newsletter. Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on this very busy and dark week.
Sure, Emma. Thanks for having me.
So I guess since on Fridays we usually wrap up the news of the week, but this has clearly dominated the news cycle, I'd love if you could just kind of take us through the events of the week as you perceive them and where we are at currently, even though by the nature of the fact that this show is live and maybe people are listening to it a bit later, there is going to be news updates since the second that we're recording this and we're broadcasting this. So take it with a grain of salt. But what is your perception of how things have unfolded?
Sure. So, we can go back, I guess, to the beginning of the week. I mean, this has been building for a few months now. Warnings with the constant warnings that Russia was about to invade Ukraine, pushback from Russia insisting that they had no intention of invading Ukraine. Obviously, they did. Vladimir Putin delivered 2 speeches this week, one on Monday evening, in which he announced grandiosely that he was recognizing the independence of 2 breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine's Donbass region, the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. He subsequently, on Wednesday, in a speech that there's some evidence was probably recorded at the same time as the speech he gave on Monday, announced that he was sending military forces in to supposedly protect these republics from some unspecified and presumably fabricated, haven't seen any evidence that one was in the cards, assault from the Ukrainian military on these republics. Since then, in the last couple of days, that was Thursday morning. Sorry, I think I said Wednesday. That was Thursday morning. In the last couple of days, we've seen a sustained Russian offensive, mostly initially air power missiles, targeting, it sounds like, Ukrainian military facilities. Then followed up by ground invasions from at least 3 points along the border. One from Belarus. He actually seems to have sent, I think, 2 columns in from fairly close to each other in Belarus. They've taken, which real Cold War heads will remember. I don't like to give to date myself, but if you're of
there's also a TV show called Chernobyl,
group.
so that
yes, that's true. You're right. You're right.
The consciousness,
probably in the consciousness. That those 2 columns look like they're making a run on Kyiv, the capital, Ukrainian capital. There's a second column in the north that seems to have attempted to capture the city of Kharkiv, which is in eastern Ukraine. It's the second largest city in Ukraine. And the third column third point of invasion seems to be moving north from Crimea. At this point, I mean, it's hard to know exactly where things stand. You get claims and counterclaims. The Russians aren't really saying very much of anything in terms of specific details. Volodymyr Zelensky late last night said something like 140, something like 130, 140 people had been killed. Ukrainians had been killed that first day. I've since seen the Ukrainian military claiming that they've killed thousands of Russian soldiers, a couple thousand Russian soldiers. I don't know how much credence to give that. A lot of the analysis, and again, there's fog of war here, and it's early going, but a lot of the analysis I've seen suggests that the Russians haven't achieved what they probably hoped to achieve with their first day plus of invasion, that they've been blunted a little bit. That doesn't mean that the war is going well for the Ukrainians. The Russians, by all accounts, still have only put in maybe a third of the forces that they have access to. So, they have the ability to go bigger here. And probably you're looking at a fairly long slog. I don't know that the military to military component of this conflict is going to be particularly long, but there's everything here to believe that there will be an extended occupation and insurgency if indeed the Russians manage to get into Kyiv and overthrow the government and occupy the country, as it sounds like they're planning to do. It seems like they're planning to do.
Right, which is very scary. I mean, the prospect of occupation, and given what Putin has spoken about, and I want to get into maybe like the underlying nationalist ideology that he's operating with. But it appears that when he talks about how they'd be open to discussions about Ukrainian neutrality, do you perceive that as like neutrality from his perspective, meaning Zelensky out, this be a more of a Belarus kind of situation where the leader is sympathetic towards Putin and acts as a bit of a client state, if you will, of Russia? Is that really likely one of the best outcomes for him?
So prior to the invasion, one of the things that was bandied about a bit was the idea of Finlandization of Ukraine, which goes back to sort of early Cold War days when the government of Finland accepted an agreement to stay neutral, not to join NATO, not to get involved in any Western military operations involving the Soviet Union in return for a pledge that the Soviets would not repeat the Winter War of the 1930s and invade Finland again. When Putin says he would be willing to discuss a neutral Ukraine, he may be talking about something like that, which would be, I think, short of the Belarus scenario where there's just an out and out Russian puppet in Kyiv. But at this point, having, first of all, I think, been reminded that Putin says a lot of things that he doesn't actually mean. And secondly, now that he's put troops on the ground and feels like he's in control of the situation, I suspect when he says neutrality now, he's probably talking about something more like Belarus.
So then let's get into, I guess, how the myths that Putin is basically using to prop up this invasion. What are some of those myths he's harkening back to? Because his rhetoric has been nakedly imperialist, obviously, but it's been anti-communist as well. I mean, kind of deeming the communist regimes, I mean, probably most focusing on Gorbachev, for example, to weakness, and it seems more old school than the I don't know, some of the way that it's been characterized by members of the press.
Sure. I mean, yeah, his comments about the Soviet Union and criticisms of Soviet leaders, basically suggesting that they created the country, the nation of Ukraine, or the state of Ukraine out of whole cloth. It harkens back to that there's a very complicated history between these peoples, between the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Belarusian people as well. I mean, there is a shared history. There is a common origin story that goes back to Kievan Rus in the 10th century and extends all the way to the present day. And so, when what Putin is doing, I think, is taking a kernel of historical fact and using it in a way that is really just propagandistic. He's using it to deny the very notion of a Ukrainian people or a Ukrainian state, or the legitimacy of a Ukrainian state, which is playing around with this kind of stuff in ways that it's not meant to be done. Obviously, there is a history there of a separate Ukrainian people. Parts of Ukraine were, well outside the Russian orbit, even during the days of the Russian Empire. So there is a distinct history, even if they're intertwined to a great extent. And for Putin to employ that at all in a way that tries to deny the existence of a Ukraine, a modern, in the modern contemporary sense, is ahistorical.
Right. And I mean, then I guess my follow-up is it just ahistorical, or is it in keeping with another similar older Russian ideology that it can be more applied to today?
I mean, I think there's certainly an imperialist streak here, but I hesitate to go too far back. Putin's formative years, if you will, were during the period when the Soviet Union collapsed. Russia was sort of adopted that mantle in a sense in the 90s, and then was pulverized by the changeover to shock doctrine capitalism. Had its economy stripped, and there's a sense of a great power that was unfairly treated, that I think is a post-Cold War feeling more than you can harken back to earlier years, but I would say it starts there, in a feeling that Russia is this kind of stifled great power, that it should be able to behave as great powers behave. And Putin, himself will say, he'll point to things like NATO's interventions in the Balkans in the 1990s, or the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, and say, this is what great powers do. They write their own rules. Russia is a great power, ergo we're just playing by the same set of rules.
Right. And in terms of Ukraine here, what's interesting to me is he keeps using this excuse of denazification, and that's like the prelude for this invasion, or the abstract morality that he's assigning to an explicitly amoral action.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the history and the weight behind that claim.
So, I mean, this goes back to World War II. There was certainly a Nazi-aligned element in Ukraine. At that time, there were, conflicts in Ukraine and kind of, in that period. And the charge has sort of been resurrected primarily in the wake of the Maidan protests in 2014 and the decision by these Russian-speaking, kind of Russophilic, if you want to call it that, populations in eastern Ukraine to reject the government in Kyiv. And there's some, there are far-right elements in Ukraine, and they are distinct, I think, in some ways from the general kind of far-right movements that you see in across Europe. For one thing, most of the European far right is actually, quite friendly with Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. And, they do have more direct ties. Groups like, you hear these names bandied about, the Azov Battalion, the, right sector, that have been part of the military picture in Ukraine, especially in the wake of what happened in 2014. In a paramilitary sense, kind of working alongside the regular Ukrainian military. So there's again, he kind of seizes on this little bit of something that you can point to, but the actual potency of that far right element in Ukraine is minimal. They never, their parties, their affiliated political parties, never do well in elections. The president and prime minister of Ukraine, or the president, the elected president is Jewish. This is not a country that is dominated by the far right. It is the perspective of I guess the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics that this is, a Nazi state that's persecuting them. And I don't want to minimize the suffering that those people in those republics have gone through over the last 8 years since as that conflict kind of froze, and you had just general kind of war conditions on the front line without any resolution. But at the same time, I think it's taking a very keyhole view and kind of trying to say that this is the entire state of Ukraine is fundamentally based on Nazi principles, which is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, there are far-right disturbing elements here in the United States, sections of the country.
There are far-right disturbing elements in Russia.
Country.
For example, Vladimir Putin and his government. Yeah,
that's the point, right? Like, I mean, how there's no we're ascribing rationality to Putin, which he's clearly thrown out the door at this point. I mean, the idea that there would be ideological consistency here is a little silly, but I mean, when you hear him saying Zelensky's government is full of drug addicts and neo-Nazis, and that's why we need to invade, I mean, give me a break here. That's clearly just some, it's, and I know this comparison has been way overdone, but it's the Bush administration saying we're coming to liberate Iraq, and I mean, it's not the same thing, but you're giving your imperialist, amoral or immoral actions a moral underpinning that is threadbare at the very least.
You're trying to make a justification, and I don't even know that the intended audience at this point is anybody outside of Russia, because I don't think even he has any expectation that anybody outside of Russia is actually listening to this. But he's speaking to a domestic audience, largely at least, to justify this war, a war that we've seen. There's been some resistance. I mean, we've seen protests breaking out in many Russian cities. Not large protests, I don't think, but I mean, he does feel, I think, some need to have an explanation for people at home.
Well, but the largeness is probably hampered to a degree by the way that and I want to talk more about Ukraine, not just about Russia, but the way that the Russian government has indicated that it will respond to anti-war protests.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't draw any conclusions from the size of the protests. There's some polling, which again is sort of dicey proposition in a country like Russia. But I mean, I've seen polling that suggests he's only got about 45% support for even recognizing the two people's republics, let alone putting troops in and going to this extent. So, I think there's a political consideration for him. Not that Russian politics are populist by any means, or that there's he has an immediate need to appeal to the voters or anything like that in that system. But he still has to be somewhat. He has to spin a story at least for the domestic audience.
Well, there is a group of people that he may have a bit more of answering to, which is and you've made this point. The term oligarch's a bit tinged with some I don't know,
it's become. I mean, I think it's broadly applicable to pretty much every country at this point. But
right,
yeah,
but
it does have
scarier because it's
ethnic
Russian
overtones when you talk about
Yes.
oligarchs in this context. Yes.
So I want to move away from the term, but colloquially, or just for the sake of this conversation, oligarchs here in Russia, I mean, I saw an article in Bloomberg today, take it with a massive grain of salt, it's in Bloomberg, but that in a day, the billionaires in Russia lost over $30 billion because of these sanctions when the invasion happened. I understand that he's the head of state and he can pretty much do what he wants, but I don't, for business interests in Russia, and I know that they've kind of consolidated a bit of like their manufacturing, and so they understand the sanctions may not affect them in the way that it might affect another country, but the billionaires are still going to be hurt by this. What's their role in all of this?
So, I mean, it is interesting, I think, that among the events that took place on Thursday, there was an event televised in Russia where Putin met with business leaders and explained to them that he'd been forced to take this action. He didn't really want to, and it's all the Ukrainians' fault, and he just had no choice. Well, Ukrainians and NATO and the United States, I guess. I think it's interesting that, as you say, he's not really accountable at this point, but I think it's interesting that he felt the need to address that community specifically, because you're right, they're the ones who are going to suffer the most from sanctions. Now, Russia is a large country that is a major part of the global economy. They are a huge energy provider, particularly to Europe. Putin has spent the last few years taking advantage of high oil prices, for example, to stockpile a very large foreign currency war chest for just such an occasion, in case that something happened and Russia found itself on the end of really punitive sanctions. So I think they can ride this out for a while. The question is how long, and the other question is how long are the countries sanctioning Russia, and particularly Europe, with its need for gas, and countries, each member of the EU seems to have its own specific economic connection to Russia, and you've seen talk of countries arguing, like, couldn't we carve out an exception for luxury cars, or can't we carve out an exception for the diamond market, like all playing to their own domestic constituencies. And so the question is, how long can they survive this? How long are those governments going to be willing to tolerate the economic hit that they will take? And it's almost kind of a contest at this point of wills to see, or if this goes on, the state of sanctions goes on for an extended period of time, it'll be sort of a contest to see who blinks first.
And given the fact that China has been very neutral publicly about what's happening in Ukraine, but privately it's clear Xi Jinping appeared with Putin at the Olympics, I believe, which was something that's fairly significant. And then there are reports of a increased friendliness and relationship between Saudi Arabia and Putin as well. So, I mean, what do you make of that shift? Because that isolates the United States to a degree that like might just precipitate our inevitable downfall that has been happening in slow motion for a few decades at this point.
Yeah, so there's a few things to consider. One, I mean, I think China's been ambivalent. The Chinese government has been ambivalent this week about commenting on precisely exactly what's happening on the ground. And the Chinese government's position in general in foreign affairs has always been respect sovereignty, respect borders, that sort of thing. Try to be friends with everybody, no problems with their neighbors and well, not neighbors so much, but everybody else. So they're in a little bit of a bind here, and you've seen some statements, some I think very carefully parsed statements from China that acknowledge that they agree that Russia has grievances here with NATO and the United States, and maybe even grievances with Ukraine, but that the way to solve these things is through negotiation, not war, and we should respect the Ukrainian national borders and that sort of thing. There's a limit probably to how far they can go to help Russia evade Western sanctions. I don't know what that limit is, and we may find out. But yeah, there is a point at which, and again, I don't know where that point is, and I'm not an expert on sort of currency trading or macroeconomics, but it strikes me that there will be a point at which countries like China and Russia and some other country, some smaller countries that have been targets of heavy U.S. sanctions, are going to say, we need to move to a different system. We need to get away from the dollar. We need to take this power away from the United States, which, when you start to talk about China being involved and maybe the Saudis being involved, who knows, that starts to become a real possibility. It would bring a lot of pain. It would bring a lot of economic struggle for everybody, in terms of changing the system that the global economy has been rooted in for, 80 years now. But it does become possible the more countries get subjected to these kinds of very punitive U.S. financial sanctions. And in the meantime, as you alluded to earlier, there is always the possibility of some internal disturbance or kind of discontent emerging in this in the Russian oligarch group, if we want to call it that. And they could ultimately decide that Putin is acting against their interests and make a move. I don't want to speculate too much about internal doings there, but that's always within the realm of possibility. The longer this goes on, I guess.
But if there's an alternative that he's working on, and there's and not to use this, I'm using this term on the national stage, but a coup of sorts of U.S. hegemony where it's like, okay, we're done dealing with this at this point. Their economy is bloated, their empire is bloated. We are able to form this alliance at this point, or not alliance, but at least relationship. I mean, that seems rational to me, even though it creates a ton of uncertainty. But we don't need to go down that road yet, because I want to ask you one more final question. That's
a ways down the road, I think. But yes, it's moving out there. Yeah.
Right. I'm just being a bit, big picture about it for a second. But to deal with what we're, the news of the week and some of the actual consequences of what we're seeing, Ukraine. What would you say is the likeliness or likelihood, Jesus, long week, likelihood of the best case scenario essentially being that Russia caves to some of these sanctions and backs off, and then the worst case scenarios of occupation, forcible regime change, and an extended period of violence? What is your sense of those two outcomes? Because the latter, unfortunately, is starting to seem more likely than the former. I mean, even the former the best case scenario might just be the republics that are more sympathetic with Russia they try to form a relationship with them. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, yes, I agree with you. The worst case scenario looks more likely at this point than I'm not even sure exactly what the best case scenario would entail at this point, but I don't think sanctions are acute enough to affect Russian policy on the time frame that it would take to, say, spare Kyiv from an assault or an occupation even. I think we're probably looking at least sustained attack on major cities in eastern Ukraine. I don't want to speculate as to how quickly the Russians might be able to take them. There's a lot of variables that go into that. I do think they'll be able to take, if they make a concerted effort, if they decide that it's Kyiv or bust, they'll be able to take it. They should be able to take it. At which point you get into the occupation and insurgency stage. I think it's interesting that Putin has sort of expressed, and he's sent his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov out to express some interest in negotiation, but the terms on which they're talking about negotiation are basically Ukrainian surrender, which I don't know that there's an appetite for that in Ukraine yet. And the other talk of which you mentioned earlier, kind of overthrowing the drug addicts and neo-Nazis, that was directed at the Ukrainian military, basically calling for a coup to overthrow Zelensky's government, and suggesting that the Russians would be willing to talk. Then that seems to me the kind of thing that you say when it sort of lends credence to the idea that they didn't get everything they wanted. Like the first day didn't quite go the way they were hoping it would. It wasn't as quick as they were hoping it would go. So I think you're settling in for a bit of a slog here, and that's sort of on the worst case scenario side of things. So I guess I would say I'm pessimistic of any quick resolution at this point.
Well, that's terrifying stuff, but I really appreciate all of your analysis, and everybody should check out the American Prestige podcast for more coverage of this topic. Derek Davison, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Luke Savage. We are back, and we are joined by Luke Savage, writer at Jacobin and author of the upcoming book, The Dead Center, Reflections on Liberalism and Democracy After the End of History. Luke, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Emma. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So when does your book come out, by the way?
It should be out in the next few months. I'm not exactly sure when, but it is currently available for pre-order at orbooks.com. And if you pre-order it now, you can actually get 15% off. So check it out.
All right. We will put a link to that in the podcast description and everything, so people can pre-order your book if they so choose. End of history, not so much, right? I mean, talk about that a bit and that concept, and I guess apply it to the events of this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, not just this week, but over the past few years, we've kind of been living through at least tentatively, a kind of, the end of history in some ways. I mean, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and, forgive me if this is kind of like cliche ground to tread, but just to set the stage a bit, I mean, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, there really was a very strong belief throughout, the Anglo-American world especially, but I think throughout, much of the world in general, that market-based liberal democracy had really triumphed, that it had kind of neutralized and defeated and outlasted all of its serious critics, not only on the left but on the right as well, and that history as a trajectory in which things develop and change was really over in some kind of way. And if you go back to the 1990s, you really do see in a lot of the kind of commentary, a lot of the literature from that time, from liberals especially, a sense that the future is not really open-ended. A lot of political possibilities are now foreclosed, and I think for a variety of reasons, particularly beginning in 2016, although you could also start from the 2008 financial crisis, you can really see how fleeting and kind of tenuous that narrative was, that story of things. I mean, it's really the idea that, history, broadly speaking, isn't going to proceed or develop in any kind of way, or that liberalism is not going to have, that it doesn't have any credible critics. I mean, those are, I think even some liberals would probably not accept that anymore. So my book is an attempt, it's an essay collection, it's an attempt to, with all of that in mind, kind of explore our current political moment, kind of post Bernie Sanders moment, also a post Donald Trump moment as well. I think it's a book that, people who are regular consumers of progressive media, will certainly enjoy, but I'm also hoping it will reach an audience of people who aren't regular consumers. I think if you're somebody who's perplexed, perhaps confused by the animus, the dissatisfaction that people under 40 especially are feeling with liberalism or with an institution like the Democratic Party today, that this book might have answers to some of your questions.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it, because I've always found the concept of the end of history, which is just the end of warfare as we know it, and the beginning essentially of, yes, neoliberal capitalism taking over United States hegemony, to be an immensely arrogant proposition. I mean, I was just talking about this with Derek Davison, our first guest. This pending relationship between China and Russia, and Saudi Arabia being in the mix as well, that spells bad things for U.S. empire, and that means the end of history lasted, what, I don't know, 3 decades?
Yeah, I think even that's generous, and that's to say nothing of the critics of the liberal consensus that have emerged, just within countries like the United States, which has since 2016, like I said, has experienced really strong critiques both from the right and from the socialist left as well, through the Sanders movement and other things.
I wanted to pull up this tweet, if we could, from a reporter who got this quote from Tommy Tuberville. I don't know if you've seen this, Luke. Just wanted to see if you'd respond to this, because I found this amusing, given that you do some writing for Jacobin and you have such a great historical context. Listen to how silly this quote is, right? Okay, we have this up. Tuberville claims Putin is invading Ukraine because Russia is a communist country that needs more land. He can't feed his people, said Tuberville. It's a communist country, so he can't feed his people, so they need more farmland. All right, I think we have a good grasp of why that's stupid, but perhaps if Tuberville is listening, maybe you could break that down for us.
I mean, so forgive me, Tuberville is a United States senator. He's not doing a bit by calling himself senator.
No, he's not doing a bit. He was a football coach, but is now one of the 100 most powerful people in the country, 150 or whatever, from Alabama.
Wow, yeah, I confess I actually am not familiar with him, but yeah, I mean, that's in some ways, I mean, it's an absurd comment, but in some ways I think it's very emblematic of the strange valence that anything to do with Russia has taken on in the United States. since 2016. I think that it's difficult to overstate how powerful and how influential the kind of mid-century, mid-20th century anti-communist impulse was, how much that animated not just conservatives, but liberals in the United States especially as well. And, you've really seen, since 2016 where, liberals in particular were very concerned about, alleged links between Donald Trump and Russia. You really saw, you saw a lot of things like this, right? And it wasn't just from conservatives. It was from, there was, I believe it was Joy-Ann Reid, the MSNBC commentator, talking about authoritarian communist Russia. I can't remember who it was who was talking about Melania Trump, perhaps, and Soviet Yugoslavia, things like that. The impulse remains, even though there's nothing, it remains as a reflex. Even though, there's nothing, it goes without saying, there's nothing communist about Russia. If the, and this is one of the things I find very perplexing about the liberal attitude here is that, if you want to understand why certain figures on the right seem to be admirers of Vladimir Putin or Russia in its current incarnation, I don't think you have to resort to, any kind of conspiratorial speculation at all. There's a very obvious reason why people on the new right in the United States would admire a country like Russia as it currently is. It's an oligarchic system with built around a single kind of strongman, charismatic personality. There's a parliamentary democracy attached to it, although it's a very managed and compromised one. And Putinism is also something that's kind of branded itself with the imprint of nationalist traditionalism. So obviously that's a package that would be attractive in many ways, a model that would be attractive to plenty of figures on the American right today. And I think that's how we should understand it.
And Tuberville's a bit behind the eight ball there, because you have Tucker Carlson speaking fondly of Putin and the invasion into Ukraine, at the very least saying, why do I care? I'm rooting for Russia, those kinds of things. Other right-wing politicians claiming the same thing, while at the same time, some of the, I'm asking for ideological consistency on the right, so that's probably a fool's errand in and of itself, but they're still trying to use the old Cold War propaganda framework that very much exists, but is being washed away a bit by the admiration for the imperialism and the nationalism of a figure like Putin and his government.
Yeah. I think that's certainly true. One other feature of this, though, that I think is worth comment, and that I think people need to be vigilant about is there certainly are instances in which this kind of impulse, it's not only used against the right, it can be used against the anti-war left as well. This week, there was so much happening people may have forgotten, but this week was actually the 2-year anniversary of Bernie Sanders' victory in the Nevada caucuses with 47% of the vote.
That
2 years ago,
like 500 years ago. Now, I was there. That's insane. But anyway, keep going.
And it was an extraordinary night. And you're right. It feels like much longer in many ways, much more distant than can really be captured in 24 months of time. Feels much further away than that. But people will remember that, there were attempts to tie Sanders to Russia ahead of that caucus, right? And I don't think those are, I don't think that kind of thing is an isolated instance. So, liberals will use this as a cudgel against the right. And of course, there are very well-founded criticisms of the right's, in some cases, embrace or celebration or ambivalence, at least, towards Putin and Putinism. But I think people need to be vigilant about the ways that kind of thing can be used against the anti-war left as well.
It's interesting that you bring up Bernie Sanders, because we have his take here on Ukraine. You have that, Bradley? Sorry, it's a bit of short notice. Just give us a second. But while Bradley pulls this up, I saw Ilhan Omar's statement about sanctions. She never misses, right? For the most part, it's just always on point about how she's okay with them being targeted, but if they're broader, affecting, editorializing a bit, but this was the crux of what she says. But if they affect the Russian people, she's less interested in it. And then we, of course, have someone like Bernie Sanders who responded to the invasion and also, I think, hit the nail on the head.
Good evening. Right now, as we speak, invading Russian military forces are moving across Ukraine. We are witnessing the most massive military operation in Europe since World War II. There must be no ambiguity in acknowledging that what the whole world is seeing today is nothing less than a blatant violation of international law and of basic human decency. This war will likely kill thousands of people and create millions of refugees. At a time when the global community is already struggling with the COVID pandemic and climate change, this war could plunge Europe into long-term economic and political instability. Make no mistake about it, the effects of this war will be felt here in the United States and countries throughout the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin has justified this war in various ways, including by claiming in a recent speech that Ukraine is not a real country, but simply a part of Russia. Regardless of what revisionist historical argument or flimsy legal pretext Putin may offer, this war is clearly an act of premeditated aggression against Ukraine and its people. This aggression is unacceptable, and the nations of the world must respond vigorously to defend democracy and the rule of law. In my view, it is clear that the United States and our NATO allies made real efforts over the past weeks and months in trying to address Putin's stated security concerns. Tragically, those offers were not reciprocated. As a result, now is the time to maintain unity with our allies and impose severe sanctions on Vladimir Putin and his government. Severe sanctions. These moves should not only isolate the Russian economy, but should include freezing access to the billions of dollars that Putin and his oligarch cronies have stashed in European and American banks. At a time when he is inflicting enormous suffering and destruction on the world, Putin, one of the wealthiest people on earth, should not be allowed to enjoy the billions he has stolen from the people of Russia.
Yeah, I mean, I there's a lot there that I think is pitch perfect, but I mean, your response, Luke, to what Bernie had to say there.
Well, I think it's very emblematically Bernie in some ways. I think the level of message discipline he practices is pretty incredible. Right. How he's always able to so kind of compellingly pivot to an argument about plutocracy and the concentration of wealth and things like that, which I mean, perhaps I'm wrong here, but anecdotally, I think Sanders is one of the only people I've seen adopt that frame in relation to the current situation. And I mean, I'm not an expert on sanctions and how they work and things like that, but I mean, broadly speaking, the line I've seen from Ilhan Omar that you alluded to, I think Cori Bush said something similar as well, that sanctions should not be targeted against ordinary Russians. That seems like a pretty good operating principle to me. And the part of Sanders' remarks that you played just now, in which he was talking about targeting Russian billionaires and oligarchs, that strikes me as a good operating principle as well.
I mean, yeah, we were having this discussion on the show yesterday about, are sanctions even an effective tool in and of themselves, right? Are sanctions going to inherently, even if they're targeted towards the moneyed elites, be offset and pushed onto the regular people of the country? I mean, and that is, I think, the number one fear. I'm still a little mixed on that, because I do think context matters. A nation like Russia that does have a lot of money, and it's a much larger country, and it does have oligarchs to that degree, you can more effectively target them. A place like Afghanistan, that's a whole different conversation. Of impoverished nations imposing sanctions there, that is never going to be a recipe for good things, and I think is frankly cruel. I'm wondering what you think about that distinction, because I don't know if it's realistic to say Biden should just do no sanctions whatsoever in the face of what we saw.
Well, I mean, I think it's important not to forget that the Biden administration's recent decision to freeze, money that belongs to the people of Afghanistan that's held in U.S. bank accounts, and also to brand this confiscation in some ways as reparations for 9/11. I mean, that is, I think, is as cruel and brutal and opposed to human rights as anything the Trump administration did. I mean, even with the kind of the vengeance and kind of reparations frame attached to it, there's something I think quite Trumpian about that.
Yes.
So, in light of the current situation in vis-a-vis Russian aggression and Ukraine, I mean, it's important not to lose sight of the fact that, the United States, whether it's run by a Democrat or a Republican president, is, to say the least, not a good actor on the international stage, and does all kinds of things which violate very rudimentary principles of human rights. I think I've strayed a little from your question, though.
No, that's okay. I mean, it brings us, I guess, to a bit of a bigger picture question about the way that this week the left here in the United States was responding to what we saw in Ukraine. I mean, I still believe that in being inherently skeptical and critical of what the United States government is saying in terms of international intelligence, especially when the stakes are so high, is a good operating principle. But there are a lot of people, the left was wrong. Look, listen to the State Department and the Biden administration. They had this right from the get-go, even though, I think Jake Sullivan 3 weeks ago was saying, okay, the invasion's going to happen very soon. I mean, I don't think this proves anything about trusting the intelligence community and what they release to the public. In fact, I mean, a broken clock is right a few times a day, and they ended up being right here. But I guess a big picture question about lessons learned for the left and how we should take this information. What is your biggest takeaway from this week?
Well, I think everybody was wrong to some degree. I mean, you can say that the intelligence that the administration was citing and that we were seeing in the media has ultimately been borne out in some way, but it seems to me that there were incessant claims about very specific timing for an invasion, the nature of what the attack was going to be, going back at least to December, if I'm not mistaken, and that was clearly wrong. I agree with you that skepticism of official American sources, is that remains an important operating principle. I don't think that's something that should be disputed. Just because a broken clock is right twice a day. So, it's all a very messy situation. But I think, if there was ever a time not to seize on an occasion for clicks and engagements, or to kind of take out your, litigate your Twitter beefs or whatever, I think this would be it.
Yeah, did I say broken clock is right once a day? I appreciate the soft correction if that's what that was. But Luke, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Everybody, we should have you on again when your book does come out, because I want to talk a bit more about the contents of it once I'm able to read it. Luke's book is called The Dead Center: Reflections on Liberalism and Democracy After the End of History. It is coming out in a few months, but you can pre-order it, and we will put the link below if you would like to do so. Luke Savage of Jacobin, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Emma. Take care.
Yep. All right, folks. Now, should we go into the fun half, or should we let's just keep going? Wow. I don't know if I have the authority to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let's bring in JR. Oh, right. Sorry. Let's go to break, and then we will be right back and bring in Jayar Jackson of TYT. We are back, and we are joined by Jayar Jackson, whose new show is called The Watchlist for TYT Network. Jayar, thanks so much for being here. Good to see you, man.
What's going on? I mean, I had to, join you guys at some point. I mean, we still drag you into TYT every once in a while, so we might as well.
It's definitely not a drag, except when John's around, obviously. That kind of ruins the whole vibe.
He just told me, I leave my show, Watchlist, and then here comes John doing the damage report. And he just crossed over past me, and I said, "Oh, I gotta go jump on a majority report right now." And he goes, "Oh, so Emma can talk to some of us here, huh?"
Mm-hmm. Well, if he wanted to, he could come on before his show, which starts at 1 p.m., but he has chosen not to do so.
Oh.
So, we're feuding, and it's been a long, long feud. So let's not, I don't even want to get into it. I'm so pissed at him.
Apparently it's the same.
So the Watchlist. Yeah, good to see you. The Watchlist. Tell us a little bit about it.
So the Watchlist, because I've been with TYT since forever, I was always the guy who cultivated the video stuff and made sure that people, enhanced the things that were happening, or maybe remembered what some politicians said just last year even, and how maybe sometimes the hypocrisy is there, or maybe just the fun side of things going on. So it's a video-driven show. So I like to tell the story through what people have said, because I've always said, if you're trying to convince someone of something, don't tell them, because they're not going to believe you. Let them tell themselves, especially if it's a hypocritical point, which damn near every politician likes to do. So yeah, it's video driven. We jump off of those. We analyze. I have a guest most every day, and it's a bit of a fun time. It's fast paced and it's early morning. So those morning shows have the bells and the zany people going, yeah, wake up, here's your drive time. I avoid that, but we still have good energy. We make sure you guys are up and ready to go. Now this is early here for everyone else. Yeah. It's noon time.
Honestly, 1 p.m. is still early for me. I'm a late sleeper by nature, but unfortunately, I got to get up a little bit earlier to do this show, although I'm enjoying it. It was a little easier when I was working on LA time with you guys. But let's get into it a bit, because we've exhausted, incredibly important topic, but we've talked in the first hour of the show for a long time about Russia, Ukraine. Let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court, because Biden has finally made his pick. Now, there were 3 options for people that don't remember, and I think he clearly made the best pick. There was an extensive push by Clyburn of South Carolina to nominate J. Michelle Childs. She is definitely, I think, was the worst of the 3 finalists. She has a record of being fairly anti-labor, working for a law firm that advertised keeping your workplace union free. Mm-hmm. She made rulings, including sentencing. What was the amount of weed that the guy had? Sam made some, it was a cup or whatever. It was 12 ounces, something. What was it, JR?
It was straight up in it was like a solo cup amount. Is that what we're talking about?
He was trying to be funny and put ounces into measuring cup. It was very confusing.
Doesn't quite work
to make
like
it seem
that,
like
though.
It's such a huge thing is probably what he's trying to make it sound like, a cup.
It was more like it was a bad joke, but the point being, she sentenced him to many years in prison for 8 ounces of pot, this nominee, and you had news coming out saying Biden was courting GOP support for his Supreme Court pick.
Yeah.
And since she's from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham was pushing for her. He's enraged today. Do we have those tweets by him, Bradley? Let's put that up.
No.
Yeah, so Lindsey Graham is pissed that Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to be the nominee for the Supreme Court. Now, before we even read this, I just want to make it clear. Jackson has one of the best records, I think, of we could put this up. Jackson has, we'll read that in a second, but one of the best records of a Supreme Court pick in a long time. She represented Guantanamo Bay prisoners and also was a public defender. So I'm very happy with the pick of the 3 finalists. But here's Lindsey Graham. If the media reports are accurate, then Judge Jackson has been chosen as the Supreme Court nominee to replace Justice Breyer. It means the radical left has won President Biden over yet again. The attacks by the left on Judge Childs from South Carolina apparently worked. And here he is down here. I expect a respectful but interesting hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Harvard-Yale train to the Supreme Court continues to run unabated. So what they were hiding behind here is the fact that Childs did not go to an Ivy League school. The Harvard-Yale train was very aggressively put forward by Lindsey Graham when he nominated the, what was it, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and in fact, they went to the same high school. So it's also, it's the Georgetown prep train to the Supreme Court, in fact.
What is it about? Okay, there's a thing when I've always talked about the Harvard and Yale and the Ivy League school stuff. And yes, this is still on that same train. So there's some frustration I can see people have with that because there's this weird deity-like praise that we have for just those schools. So I understand that. But the thing is, it only fits their narrative when they want it to, as you pointed out here. But he wanted someone, I feel like his main driver was South Carolina. South Carolina, South Carolina, South Carolina. It always comes back to him. And even before that, even when it was just announced, because it was a campaign promise that Biden would nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, the first thoughts came out was, oh man, oh, you mean you're going to lower yourself? It's immediate. It's immediate pushback. And then they were probably hoping that Biden, hoping for some level of weakness, would then kowtow to them and maybe bow down to someone like what Lindsey Graham would suggest. Because they're thinking, oh, well, you know, they always have trouble getting us to confirm any Supreme Court picks. We get the opportunity to mold the one that he chooses based off of what he already said, and I still get some level, a significant level of input on who this is. No, that's not how it works. Did we get input on who was coming in? Did we get input on Kavanaugh before he even was nominated? Did we get input on him once he was nominated and we discovered all these potential problems with him? Did we get any of that? The idea that the folks that are in the minority can continue to say and aggressively push that they should control things like this when they don't control any level of government when it comes to this type of thing, I mean, where they have to tie in the Senate, is that we should be able to do the same, right? But it's never that way. They have mandates when they have a one-person advantage in the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, the one person, it turns it over from split to mandate. It's that razor thin, apparently. But what's interesting, too, about this outrage from Lindsey Graham is that Ketanji Brown Jackson is a D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals judge. Mm-hmm. At least 1 or 2 years ago, I think she was nominated. Lindsey Graham voted for her. Isn't that interesting? So she's already been approved by the Senate, just not to the Supreme Court. But all of a sudden, she's a radical left nominee that cannot possibly be appointed to the Supreme Court.
It means he's been dragged so far to the left by these super radicals, is always the point. Again, because they know the majority of people won't have the opportunity. I mean, I started looking into her more today because, as you know, when they first threw out the whole list, for me to try to research every one of them would mean my job would be a U.S. senator. But they know who she is. They already know who many of these nominees were. And I don't know if people realize this, and this is across both parties. When a president feels he's going to get a shot at nominated Supreme Court justice, there is such a long, there's a list that's been put together before he even considered it, first of all. Mm-hmm. They know who is ready and go down the pike for this. And then there's consultants and advisors and lists put together by many other people that are not named Joe Biden. Then he may go through the process of how does this look politically? How does this look for what we need to do as far as filling this particular seat? Because we know that the balance between conservative and liberal justices is not going to change. So let's find someone that they can accept that can fill, this seat. And she clerked under him as well. So it kind of fits. But now it's left to find out where they're going to try and poke some holes.
Well, the holes could come very well from the typical two, Manchin and Sinema. Manchin also was in favor of Childs. And guess which excuse that he was using? Oh, same thing. She went to a public school. As if he cared about that a lick before, right? No, he likes that she was the most conservative of the options and that she has advocated against unions for a long period. That's kind of the class politics that he espouses. I mean, what's your sense of the likelihood that someone that Manchin might try to flex his muscle once again after he effectively has killed Build Back Better?
This is what I'm wondering, man. Joe Manchin, he didn't first he seemed to not embrace it, but he seemed to kind of he didn't care that people were giving him trouble for his pushback on nearly everything that Joe Biden promised and planned and tried to implement. But it seems like near the end of it took so long. It was Build Back Better. Then we got the infrastructure thing going, and he was all on board, then pushed back, and then really exposed that he never had any intention of ever supporting it. So after all that made its whole rounds, he started getting frustrated, and he was agitated from reporters that were greeting him in the hallways and asking him about this. So I wonder if he's kind of spent, if his energy is done. I mean, if political capital, if you will, if it's all done, considering he is controlling the messaging and the agenda of the Democratic Party when they're in power. So I guess it's hard to tell, but my guess would be that he's going to kind of fall into place a little bit more, because I think he enjoys that the heat has been off of him, especially with all the news reports that have changed and we've kind of gotten beyond it. And he thinks he's kind of won that battle. He doesn't want his name to come back up and for us to be like, remember that guy? Remember what he did with Build Back Better? Now he's doing this with the Supreme Court pick. I feel like he's not going to want that heat.
Well, he's delivered for his donors already in the way that they really care about. I mean, he could feasibly do this again, but I mean, and yeah, I'm split on it. Maybe it's wishful thinking, like you say, or like I say. I guess I'm kind of erring on the side of that as well.
First of all.
Well, so then I take what you have to say and your prognostication a bit more seriously. It's not just my feeble mind or heart, I should say. Let's turn to another. What would you call the interactions between Jen Psaki and Peter Doocy at the White House press briefings?
Soap opera like,
yes,
drama, adversarial.
Feud. Another feud, just like me and John Iadarola. And here they have these interactions every single day. Doocy's a clown. Now he's pushing what I think right-wingers are going to push for a while in the wake of this Ukraine crisis as oil prices are being driven up, which is, okay, now it's time to ramp up domestic drilling and try to throw a wrench into any piecemeal or small tweaks that the Biden administration was considering when it comes to climate change. Here is this interaction between Doocy and Psaki.
There's this talk about a possible forecast for financial pain, particularly at the gas pump for Americans. The president said today the notion that this is going to last for a long time is highly unlikely. Would he try to ensure that by lifting some of the restrictions that he's put in place on the energy industry, or rethinking some projects like the Keystone Pipeline?
Well, first of all, the Keystone Pipeline is not flowing, so I'm not sure how that would solve anything. There's also plenty of oil leases that are not being tapped into by oil companies, so you should talk to them about that and why. But what the president's talking about is we certainly understand, and he said this today, right? May have been in response to your question, I don't remember, but if there's an invasion of another country by a big country, there's going to be impacts on the markets, right? And we certainly anticipated that, and we anticipate that as it relates to the global oil market as well. So that's why the president for weeks now has been engaging with a range of big global suppliers, some in the Middle East, others, to see what we can do to ensure there's supply out there in the market to reduce the impact on the American people.
I mean, what's your response to that? Because I'm frustrated even by her framing there. The way that you should pivot is, this is why we need to get off of our dependence on oil, because one, it is damaging our climate to such a degree. It's a existential threat to the human population. And two, when we have this dependence and we have made these relationships like with Saudi Arabia, this dirty relationship that the United States always has to kind of skirt around in terms of its hypocrisy, and then they go and try to develop a relationship with Russia as well. No, that's untenable, and we have to move towards a solution, as opposed to like Jen Psaki saying to him, oh, why don't you talk to the oil companies about their own drilling in the United States? That's silly.
Right. Yeah. And so maybe because she was in that particular situation, didn't know where he was going to go with it. But there's so many different options. Again, it starts to shine a light on why there's so many defenses of so many bad people. And it's outside of just, the white nationalism or the love for Putin invading another country and, oh, he's a strongman white guy, which that probably starts and ends for Donald Trump because that's his thought process. But folks who've been paid by energy companies and continue to have to represent them have been lobbied by them. And we brought up Joe Manchin a minute ago. He's definitely one of them. So this crosses party lines. The thought is you have to continually, and no matter what the situation is, protect those interests. So yes, when you support the Saudis when they do horrific things, or when you support these guys in this, or when European countries have to depend on the oil that comes from all this, or just pointing out to Americans, hey, gas prices are going to go up. It all goes back to making sure that we feel we have to depend on that because that's the only route. Now, as you said, the easy way to go, or the most obvious in my mind way to go is, well, why don't we start developing ways to do this at home that don't depend on these types of folks, so we don't have to feel like even some presidents or some officials feel that they're under the thumb of these types of people, these leaders of other countries. So I thought we were America. I always point this out. We're the most powerful. We have the best military in the world. We got the best people, the best minds. We do things before anyone else does them, except for develop new forms of energy so we don't have to deal with people like this anymore or cut off their supply line or the reasons why they have so much power and money. Why don't we?
And it's a way to sell that agenda too. I mean, even in the short term, if you have to make deals about oil, I mean, I understand we can't tomorrow flip a switch and be like, oh, yeah, we're off oil tomorrow. Right. But even if you do have to make those deals, you can still take an opportunity to reframe the question and sell the necessity to get off of climate change, not just to help the planet because liberal hippy dippies, but because there is an actual foreign policy reason for it from the perspective of Democrats like Psaki and Biden.
Yeah, and by the way, I've said this over and over and over again. I love my 1984 gas-powered sports car that I still am working on that smells like the inside of a garage. That's just me. That's my attachment to old school cars. That's one of those hobbies of mine. But this whole thing about preserving the planet, making sure that we have to deal with these types of things, I'm willing to give it up. It's weird how that works. It's just a hobby. It's a thing you have to give up because you care about your entire world around you, instead of just continuing to think that we have to go down this same line. Again, it's for the money. It's not really for the stances or any of the principles that they say they would have in that. And bringing everything production back to America. Look, I know you're on the East Coast, but I'm sure it's the same way there. But the way that I see Teslas rolling around the streets here, as many of you see as you see of Priuses, people will buy these things. It's not like they don't want them, and they can still have this whole air of superiority, or look, I have this expensive car, I'm a Los Angeles producer. All these types of things happen. You can still transition and still make it happen a certain way. So it's not like there's no way that the consumers are not going to respond well to this, is my point, even if it's someone like Elon Musk.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I've never sat in a Tesla. I really never have, but I've seen them and they're pretty, but then I feel dirty about it because of Elon Musk. I look at them like, those are pretty, but
they're not amazing enough to have to deal with propping this guy up further. Because I did sit in one as well. I have a friend who had one. One of my kids.
No, I haven't. I've never been in one. I've never been in one. Yeah, yeah.
It's not life changing the way that they would force you to believe.
It's not a spaceship. It's not a spaceship. All right. Well, JR, thank you so much for coming on today. Please, everybody, check out the Watchlist on TYT Network. JR is, one of the old school 4 original employees of TYT. That's right. JR, that's true.
I was either 4 or 5 because when I was here, Dave was gone, but he came back and I didn't know who this guy was. So 4 to 5, 4.5 we'll go with.
So yeah, JR's been doing this for a long time. It's overdue that you have your own show. Really appreciate you coming on today, and hopefully I can see you in person at some point.
Absolutely, man.
Right. Yeah. Hope to come out to LA.
Come to SoFi. We'll catch a Rams Giants game.
Oh God, that would not end well for me. Oh, I forgot you're a Rams fan. Congratulations from like St. Louis and back in the day. And you had the Dodgers win, which is like the past like 3 or 4 years for you have been amazing.
Lakers in 20, Dodgers after that, Rams after that. Come on, man.
I'm like slightly salty towards you now. But anyway. Appreciate it so much. Later, JR, and everybody check out the watch list.
Thank you, Emma. Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right, folks, with that, we are going to head into the fun half. 3 rapid fire great guests, one after another. That was I'm glad we pulled that off, got everybody in. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Mark Kruger talking about the commune of St. Louis. You're going to want that Patreon episode, patreon.com/leftreckoning. It's going to be on my year-end list for best histories of the year. Getting to the First International, the Paris Commune, the post-Civil War, and how that all led into a massive general strike and commies taking over St. Louis.
Nice. All right. Well, everybody check that out. And don't forget, again, to get your tickets to either the Brooklyn live show in March or the Boston live show in May. You can find those tickets on majority.fm, or you can go to, what's the website link? majoritylive.com if you want to just go straight there. All right, folks, final fun half of the week. Oh, my Lord. See you there. 6-4. Oh, wait, I'm not going to take calls today, I don't think. Maybe
we do one call.
Maybe we do.
We have somebody, I think we want Rachel because she's in Ukraine.
Oh, okay. Then yes.
But yeah,
we might take more than one call, but definitely one call.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflakes says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what?
What?
Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Will from Indiana. Just wanted to say, despite the crazy week in news, you all knocked it out of the park with this week's show. Matt, Bradley, and Emma, you all deserve to pat yourselves on the back for all your work. Great job hosting this week as well, Emma. Finally, I can't wait for the Blues Rangers game next week and another one soon after. May the best team win. You're a Blues fan. I'm so sad that we don't have Pavel Buchnevich anymore. Congratulations on having him. That's my hypothesis in that area is that the Rangers GM Drury thought that we were going to get Eichel. And I've heard this a little bit too. So we trade Buchnevich to clear cap space, and then basically Buffalo said no, he's not being traded to the East Coast. That's not happening. So he is ended up in Vegas, and I'm very sad. All right, let's take this call. Calling from a 413 number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Emma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Hey, this is Rachel. I am calling from northwest Ukraine at this moment.
Rachel, thank you so much for calling. I hope you're okay.
Well, yeah, that's relative, but yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Where should I begin?
Well, I mean, really just start with what has this week been like for you and the people around you?
Definitely. In some ways, I'm still stunned. In others, it's been tragic. It's been infuriating. I could say I did not expect this. I'd say really nobody did, and even the, NetSec asshole nerds that are gloating about it. Changing the goalpost every other day, I kind of feel like they're getting credit for something they didn't necessarily do either. I've lived in Kyiv for more than 5 years. I lived in Moscow for a while before that as well. And I had not intended to leave the city. In fact, I wanted to stay and kind of be in solidarity with people taking the most of it, even going further east. I've got friends out there who that I wanted to help. Ultimately, after the bombings that took place in strategic points, well, pretty much all throughout the country, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and speaking with my flatmates in Kyiv and realizing I don't have the skills that I could particularly be good in an urban war zone, and the simplest just to go to their home village in the Northwest. But so even that has its own challenges, as I think your first guest, Derek, was saying, is that there is targeting from Russia, from Belarus, and even from Transnistria, this little frozen conflict breakaway region of Moldova, from coming to the south near Romania. But up here, we are pretty close to Belarus, so it's not. I'm not 100% out, but certainly not like Kyiv, where I've seen a lot of people, where I lived, and just detonations.
Well,
every which way. And then,
I mean, look, having the skills to participate in a war zone, and that should not be what is asked of you. Although I do see that there are a ton of Ukrainian, just regular people taking up arms, including
some people that you would not expect, like other hippie pacifist friends of mine that are now, particularly in the case young men. Can't leave the country. Well, 18 to 60. I mean, not everyone needs to be in a direct military role or combat role, but there are some who are otherwise pacifists that are taking up arms and joining civilian defense controls and patrols. And it's another world we live in. And again, I feel like everything a week ago, even 4 days ago, feels very, very surreal. And
right.
I don't know. Also, as an American here, I really feel my own naivete and ignorance, having, we have not had war on our own soil for like a century and a half, and even many in Western Europe, nobody of combat ages, unless they were like teenagers, is around to see that too. So it's kind of a legacy that I think Westerners are trying to process, and particularly people that are not nearby. I think it's easier to make into a symbolic term for on one level or another in terms of playing with blame and as opposed to survival strategy.
So,
and I'm stunned, really. But yes, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I just two questions for you. I mean, one, is there? You talk about how even younger people are a little shocked by it as well, but there has to be some sort of context there and legacy of World War II, of course, that brings up and probably has there's muscle memory in Ukraine for, I would imagine, for World War II, and an understanding that was probably some of what escaped me earlier in the week and still will, because I'm not from there. And if I'm just curious if you saw that and witnessed that as well. And secondly, you mentioned that you're near Belarus in the north. I mean, was everybody so shocked when I think there was a sense that Russia would come in from the east, but when they came in from the north as well, clearly with Belarus's help, what was some of the reaction to that?
I mean, I still feel like the full extent is truly shocking, just because. And yes, people for one way or another can talk about NATO. That's another. There's so many different levels of like philosophical debates versus in-your-face actions. And Putin's whole time in office, or even you could argue the 90s had their own thing. And any post-Soviet era could argue about like Russia's legacy of influence and power after the U.S. kind of stomped on it and so forth, of trying to subjugate and make itself significant by like cheating around the margins and kind of making trouble on the side and just going in and out. And I guess I think most people expected things like that in some form or another that could get hot. And I think a lot of people really expected things to largely stay in and near Donbass, which I have friends down there, and it's been especially rough for them, but they've also been there and done that and seen it all. But yeah, I guess the World War II legacy, and with people saying that like, okay, nobody God wins law exists for a reason. Like the Hitler comparison gets a bit, I don't know, I don't like it. But at the same time, feeling like the people that your grandparents, great grandparents were fighting against suddenly are, the ones at your door. So there's that image. And I guess for the people who want to talk about the Nazi element, yeah, there were some parts of Ukraine that did have, that did have like Axis sympathizers that were of use when they were conquered from the West, and yeah, there's some of that is nurtured, I would even say, by diaspora communities like U.S. and Canada. Operation Paperclip to some extent, and just old Cold War relics that whatever, as long as you're anti-communist, they'll look the other way. There's that little element just in how that functions in Ukrainian politics now. It's pretty minimal. It's mostly just a dysfunctional democracy that's largely dictated by the whims of oligarchs, like many dysfunctional democracies, U.S. included. So
right. Well, any message that you want to get out there for everybody here and who's listening?
Well, let's see. Well, among, I guess, other things, it's scary, and people, it's gonna get ugly, but I don't count Ukraine out just yet. People are yeah, they are tough. They have seen it all. And also, another thing I worry about is conflicts about refugees and Eurocentrism, and that what we're going to see about pitting people from different war zones in different regions against each other. I don't have any answers for that, but it's something I think could get ugly. Maybe something Ronald Reagan might know something about on a legal level, dealing with refugees. So, yeah, I could go on. I think I've gone on a lot, though. It's a lot to take in, basically. So.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to call in and speak with us.
Sure.
Matt,
yeah, of course.
Matt,
I was just going to say thanks.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And God, I remember talking with Michael about some of this so much. And yeah, just 2 years ago at the live show and chatting with him, and maybe seeing about certain people I know as peers that to be on TMBS that are still around. If that's a thought, possibly.
Well, that's yes, very sweet and very kind of you to call in. Just please stay safe and
keep us posted.
Keep us posted. Don't hesitate to call in next week, and we'll make sure to get you through because you're on the ground, and I really appreciate your perspective.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Shakawi, one of the reasons American progressives and lefties in Ukraine are shocked as much as the last caller is due to a total mistrust of NATO and U.S. government intelligence. To add that to people like you, Hassan, and TYT, the most popular progressive voices totally misread Putin's intentions. In a way, you are responsible for what the poor listener is currently going through in that situation, says Shakawi.
Yeah, let's be very clear about this, which I don't agree with at all. Rachel actually just said, like, nobody really expected this. Like, China didn't expect this. A lot of people didn't expect this, except for these agencies, which have blown their credibility. It's not a mystery why their credibility is blown. It's very obvious why we'd be skeptical of it. So I think, like, it's fair enough to say that we should, come away from this with a awareness that yes, other countries can be bad actors, but there's a certain type of folk that said, like, that tries to meet this with, yeah, America's not the only bad guy, because you have to admit, like, stealing from the Afghan treasury in the Iraq war was a giant crime. But then they like to act like if you acknowledge that America is also a bad guy, then you're doing something wrong and siding with Putin. They're two bad guys.
Yeah. Anyway. Sam's college chick, Emma, in your ridicule of Coach Tuberville, you misused the phrase behind the eight ball. I think you meant to say behind the curve. Being the eight ball means you are hemmed in and can't make a move without losing. He's a clown, though. Great show. Yes, that is something I sometimes do. Just be aware. There should be like I'm not asking for this, but sometimes my brain gets ahead of my mouth and I'll say the wrong phrase when I mean that exact phrase. So you caught me. Sam's mailman, honest question about the Jordan Peterson song. It's obviously influenced by Pink Floyd, but in their songs, the creepy voice telling you what to do is obviously framed as the authoritarian villain. But Jordan Peterson has built his career as a moralizing evangelist telling people what to do. So when the voice is telling you what you should do, is that supposed to be the left nefariously telling you how to behave, or is it him earnestly telling you how to behave? To be honest, Sam's mailman, I doubt he thought that much into it. I think he's a reactionary that loves old school rock and probably thinks he's on the right side of things always. Joanna, Bradley doesn't get enough love from the IMers. Shout out to Bradley, aka New Brendan. Do you have a response or just a thumbs up where no one can see you?
Thanks.
Okay. Little underwhelming, but that's all right. Fragile dictators. Emma, Matt, what do you think about how fragile and fickle-minded these dictators are? Anyway, apt IM name. How easy it is for them to declare war in a globalized world without any care or fear of sanctions. Looks like Putin has consciously built his reserves for Russia to run for 2 years with sanctions. For such fragile egos, sadly, I think we need megalomaniacs like Modi and Trump to avoid world wars. All right, I don't know if I agree with that final conclusion. You seem to be ascribing to the Mad Men theory, which is not something I agree with. I think things could be really terrible if Trump were president right now. Just take a look at his Laura Ingraham appearance where he was thought that it went through his mind that America could be launching an amphibious attack on Ukraine, or was it on Russia? He didn't really know which way was up. So I think longing for Trump in power is not the right conclusion, or not even, I'm not saying that that's your conclusion, saying that it might be preferable in this instance. I just don't think that you can even go there. Duber, I'm surprised with all the Iraq references. No one has brought up that there's a huge difference between the goals of the U.S. and Iraq and Russia and Ukraine. The U.S. wanted to bleed Iraq's oil dry and throw it to the wolves. Russia wants to Ukraine to be an extension of Russia forever. Iraq and Afghanistan were never going to be the 51st and 52nd states of the U.S.
Wait, so is Iraq less of a crime?
Putin wants Ukraine to be a part of Russia in every possible way. I don't know which is morally worse, but it's certainly different and has different implications.
I don't think so. Like, I mean, I think they're both like in terms of like 21st century crimes, really up there. But like, first of all, America invaded those countries because they wanted to set up like client states for the rest of the world. Like, I think that is offensive about the Iraq War, frankly.
Well, I mean, he says, I don't know which is morally worse, but certainly different, has different implications for the victims in attack countries. Also, Putin is 70. He's 100% feeling like he's going to die having done relatively little for Russia, and wants to feel like he's not fading away into the sands of time. That's true.
I just don't know if the intent is. I don't know what we know. I don't know if we know what the intent is. I think it's unclear. That's one of the things that's troubling about this. Like, do they just want to like take over all of Ukraine and make it a new part of Russia? I don't know that that's clearly what he wants to do. I think it's just not clear what he wants to do.
Yeah. Demian, Binder's Doom was great last night. He mentioned how great Emma and Hassan handled new information with their takes and how horribly Doors and Hinkles of our space have handled the conflict in Ukraine. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, I still don't think I said like they're never going to invade, but my point was my emphasis might have been wrong given what the outcome was.
Like, predicting the events is less important than having the right policy and morality posture towards it, which is like if somebody was correct in saying, yes, they're going to do this exact same thing, but they were saying we should preemptively sanction, for instance, like the Russian people, I think they're more wrong than we were.
Ron Quixote. Hey, MR crew, since it's the fun Hap on Casual Friday, I figured we could use a little lefty sports levity. Please check out the podcast Tipping Pitches. While primarily a baseball podcast, they are leftist pro-worker based and do a great job of breaking down how capitalism and private ownership ruin the sports we love. They are currently focused on the MLB owners lockout, and they really break down the mythical narratives of billionaires versus millionaires that much of sports media wants to push. I mean, just take a look at like how minor league go on, Bradley.
I know those guys. I went to school with them. Bobby Wagner and Alex Baisley. They're awesome. Great show. So
okay,
sure. Good
then
plug.
Definitely check that out. They are. Where did you go to school, in Jersey or to college?
I went to school NYU with them. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, I lost it. They are also big proponents of the unionization of minor league baseball, where most players don't have housing during the season and don't get paid in the off season, and many make less than minimum wage. It's unconscionable how the MLB treats its minor league players, and it's similarly immoral in the way that the college system treats its players, where they dangle the dream of a professional career in that sport over the heads of their workers, and it allows them to justify not paying them in terms of college. And then in baseball, when they don't even like have, say, maybe they would have a scholarship at college. In baseball, they don't guarantee them housing, and they pay them such little money. So that's a great cause. Thanks for the tip and very cool tying with Bradley. All right, let's do one more Ukraine story, and then we'll have a little bit more fun. I just wanted to show this because, all right, trigger warning. We're going to show two clips here. The first one is disturbing. The second one shows closer up footage of a wrecked vehicle and a victim of a car crash who is responsive, but it might be a little bit difficult for people to witness. Here is a video, and this is just unbelievable. And I hesitated even playing this, but I saw some news outlets pick this up, and there's confirmations that they're happening, including Newsweek and others. This is a Russian tank again, couching this in terms of like new information could change, but as of now, there are outlets that are corroborating this, swerving in order to run over a civilian car. Again, just trigger warning, this might be difficult.
Just parking on it now.
Yeah. So this separate video shows that after after that incredibly horrific incident happened, civilians, other civilians went onto the street to help the man out of his car here. Luckily, it seems like he's responsive. Here's just like some of the, again, many disturbing images that are coming out of Ukraine this past week. Okay, let's just cut away now, just because, you know, I luckily it seems like he's responsive, but I mean, I don't know. This is classic brutality of a force that could eventually be occupying, but is at the very least invading. And we're going to see more and more instances of this. As I mentioned earlier in the show, it's been over at least 137 people confirmed dead. That includes members of the military and civilians as well. There are the death toll is going to continue to pile up, especially as
will the war crimes, atrocities toll.
Yes. And these are just war crimes that, you know, happen. They're quotidian in these kinds of conflicts and invasions. Just brutality for brutality's sake. So I feel terribly for that man. Yeah, I hope he's okay. But in terms of the reporting that's come out of it, seems like he should be okay for right now. The Daily Beast is reporting that he survived. Maya, my boyfriend's family is in Ukraine. They're old and cannot leave. F war and solidarity with the working class across all borders. Yes. Urban Socialist, the world is a little bit bigger than the 3 lefty podcasts you listen to, people. A lefty Twitch streamer misreading the intentions of a tyrannical world leader because of mistrust of agencies that have routinely lied to the American people is not the reason why Putin is invading. Y'all are so childish.
I think it's worse than childish. I'm sorry if people are mad at me for not taking Dale or whatever. I think this move to sort of Putin jacket the left is a huge problem. And I say this fully acknowledging the fact that, of course, Russia is investing in propagandizing the West, and like there's certain people that are going to be like not useful to listen to. But this widespread thing of like everybody was wrong for like not, and is like, you know, soft on Putin, I think is silly. I don't think it's our responsibility to predict Putin's actions.
Yep. I mean, again, as you said earlier, prognostication is like, I mean, there's criticism of horse race politics, and it seems to me that an ideology and consistency is way more interesting to me and way more of a litmus test that I would want to apply to the people I consume media from than abstract prognostication. I mean,
yeah, I'm frankly like I'm more interested in hearing from folks like Davison who like admitted they were wrong versus people who are just interested in talking about how they were right. I just think it's, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, Carl Bayer, for instance, is an example of a person who said he wasn't downplaying the idea that Russia would do this. So if you want a leftist who, and he was saying that to say, like, we should also be anti-war anyway. I would check out Carl Bayer if you want somebody who got it right. That's somebody who got it right, whose politics I feel comfortable endorsing.
Let's now go to a fun clip. This might be the most terrible clip of in terms of cringiness of the week, but it's also necessary that we show this to you. You thought that the Gal Gadot Imagine video when the pandemic started, in which all of these celebrities sang together in order to bring the world together and save everybody from coronavirus just by like their essence. This one's probably worse. Annalyn McCord of 90210 reboot fame, and I don't think anything else, has decided to center herself in the midst of Russia's invasion into Ukraine. And here she is with a poem for Vladimir Putin.
Dear President Vladimir Putin,
I don't know
I'm
how we're
so
gonna get to the end of
sorry
this.
that I was not your mother.
What?
If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would this story's plight, the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm.
Can you pause it for a sec?
So much.
I'm sorry. It's just like the annoying poet and like actor thing. Keep it up, or like the emphasis on the if, the immediate upswing of the next clause and line. All right, keep going.
Laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain that the little girl of you must have seen and believed, and the formulation of thought quickly taught that you live in a cruel,
I hate
unjust
this
world.
rhyme scheme.
Is this why you now decide no one will get the best of you? Is this why you do not hide nor away shy from taking back the world? Was it because so early in life, all that strife racked your little body with fear? If I was your mother, if the world was cold, I'd have died to make you warm. I'd have died to protect you from the unjust, the violence, the terror, the uncertainty. I would have died to give you life.
What?
Oh, dear Mr. President Putin, if only I'd been your mother. Perhaps the torture of unwrit youth would not within your heart imbue ascription to such fealty against that world that you thought was so cruel. Perhaps you would hold dear human life, and on this night, instead of Mother Russia, you would call me, and I would set your mind quite free with the love that only a mother can give, and only a mother can take away.
What?
When holds she doesn't the harm at bay and leaves her boy for the promise of a man. Whatever your story, Mr. President Putin.
It keeps going.
I can't imagine how it feels in your heart, but I know if I was your mother, that would be a start.
Does she threaten to kill him as a baby?
Of what a powerful being of light you could be if your mind was only free from the violence you've seen when you were just 2 or 3. I cannot believe I was born too late. In a different place when I would have loved you so, watched you play wherever you go.
Enough. Is that how it ends? I couldn't. And this.
Let's watch. Oh, that's the end. Okay.
Okay. I'm sending this here in our little chat here. Annalyn McCord, very just invested in humanity and in human rights around the world. She will not stand for the invasion and occupation of a sovereign nation against the will of its people. She's just principled on that matter. She would never, ever be in favor of a regime that would implement such policies. Oh, wait, I just went to her Wikipedia page. She's, working with the Israeli government in 2012, doing some sort of bizarre tour. Yeah. So, can you comment on the rhyme scheme that was used there? Because it's a pretty big mishmash. It's been a while since in English class we learned poetry, but it didn't seem quite very consistent.
When hold she doesn't, the arms at bay. Like, I don't. And then using against instead of against.
Right, you got to make it work.
Apostrophe against. That is very hard. I'm kind of stunned at this moment. Because when I first saw that, I'm like, I watched it on the timeline, of course, but I only watched 15 seconds because that is very excruciating.
Yeah.
And look, we got a head start for, if there is a World War III and we have to start putting Russians into like, I'm not gonna make that joke.
Okay, well,
that's torture is what I was gonna make.
Yeah, well, that's fairly acceptable. It's torture for us. It's only fair that they have to face it as well.
And I don't think it's Putin's mother. Really is the problem here. I think it's I think that would probably maybe do a poem of like, hey Putin, if I was helping you in the 90s set up a private capitalist economy, I would have been there for you better than the Clinton advisors were.
This is like the nth degree of like Hitler shouldn't have been rejected from art school, like type counterfactual.
Right. Or if you would kill baby, she went there a little bit too. She was like, maybe I'd kill baby Putin if
the
he was
mother's
my
love
son.
can be taken away.
It's like either threatening, I don't want to get too graphic here, but she's like, I'd kill you. I mean, I'm crazy as hell.
I could take this mother's love away.
You see my fucking eyes? I did this for attention. Like, I'd kill baby Putin.
I don't know if this is just like some sort of Obama birth certificate thing, or if this is actually true. But if you go to Vera Putina, there's a woman who's stating that she is Putin's mother. And in contrast to Putin's official biography, which states that Putin's died before he became president. People like to talk about Putin's mom, I guess.
I mean, yes, but to me, it's like there's like this weird role play, like fetish thing going on. It's just like, and she's working backwards from it into a poem. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people make the mistake of when they're going to express themselves and like writing their poetry, stuff like that, to think that they're actually saying more about the subject they've chosen, but they're actually saying more about themselves.
Yes. And what Annalyn McCord said is, my acting career is very much on the decline since the 90210 revival of me. And I mean, I remember that show coming out. It was like,
this one was in 90210.
Yeah, but not the original, the reboot.
Okay.
The CW remake, which like when Gossip Girl was on, they were like, let's get more of this. And I was watching Gossip Girl at the time. Tried to watch that, and she was terrible, and she is still terrible. So, I mean, like, again, then the last point about this.
I mean, celebrities are weird.
Yeah, celebrities are weird, but just I am repulsed by the necessity of centering oneself in that way. Like, then
what was the thing they did to get us through COVID?
Right, they sang "Imagine."
Oh, right.
And they even include celebrities I like Kristen Wiig. I think Will Ferrell was in it too. What a huge bummer. Still like them. That is worse. That is worse than that. But Gal Gadot was like the person that put it together, called all her celebrity friends. Yikes. Fierce Deity. I thought this was the fun half, not the masochism half.
That's been the fun half periodically for the past couple of years.
Yeah. Demian, can you ask Matt how to spell Carl Behar's name? You have it right, C-A-R-L, but then the last name is B-E-J?
B-E-I-J-E-R.
Yeah. You can subscribe to his Substack, which is $5 a month.
Which I do.
I do as well. Recently, actually, because I actually really I liked his coverage on Ukraine.
I mean, he was smart in the sense that he didn't. He said he included in his like what the U.S. should do in contingencies, like, Russia might move into like Kiev and stuff like that, and that was smart of him to do.
Yep. Chris Burdick, you're not giving that woman's poem the proper context. You have to imagine her performing it in a smoke-filled coffee house, accompanied by bongo drums. Yes, maybe. Bourbon Socialist, this lady really thinks she's doing something. Warren from Toronto, the Mr. Putin, I'd be your mother speech, but it's Trump going, sleepy Joe Biden if I was your father.
What if that did accomplish something? What if we lived in a world where like that, Putin's like, oh no, so sorry.
Yeah.
I miss mama.
Socialist Bear, why is there a giant statue in that poet's kitchen? I don't get it. I missed it too. I was too I was cringing too hard, unable to even really look at the screen. And Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Holy shit, it's a real life Jenna Maroney. Pretty good. That's pretty perfect. Mr. Putin, tear down this wall.
Can we go
between
back to
mother and son?
I'm gonna find the Imagine video. I want to revisit that.
I don't, in fact. Tojo's bald head. Per Ukrainian defense minister, those tanks were stolen by Russian saboteurs who donned Ukrainian uniforms and broke through Obolon to cause havoc behind the lines. Okay. Again, I tried to couch it and say it was still a developing story. It's still amazing. Still really scary.
Yeah, I mean, typically we don't play sensationalist video like that because of the sort of like metadata issue and the context issue. But in the context of an invasion like this, I think
I think it's newsworthy. I mean,
exactly.
we had full transparency. We had a discussion before the show about showing it. And I hope the audience feels we made an okay decision on that front.
Anyway, I mean, basing it off of other publications with journalists that have time to look into this stuff, like the Daily Beast, published it. So
right, right, exactly. So
which not to say they're perfect, which is why I'm a little bit
right.
skittish about it. But yeah,
yes, that's why it was a discussion. Nelflo, glad you were interviewing people on the ground. Hope you were able to interview more Ukrainians to get their perspective. It's so common to see news coverage of experts or reporters, but I think equally important to interview regular people so they can voice their concerns directly. Cheers. P.S. Jayar is the man. He really is. He's awesome. Big Dick Cheney, friend of MR Sarah Silverman, is in the Imagine video too. She says Kristen Wiig later called and apologized for getting her to do it. Oh, she did? Well, I mean, Sarah's amazing. Like, it's just, and so there you go. Kristen Wiig and Sarah Silverman, still great people. That's how I feel. Very validating. All right, let's.
I mean, it must be crazy to be a celebrity.
Yes. And you're like, I mean, you want to do a good thing, right? I get it. All right, we are going to take one more call because I believe I know who this is, and this person has been calling this week. Haven't gotten to them. Calling from a 917 number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Alex from New York.
Alex from New York. You were the final call of the week.
I am honored. I wanted to say I got a ticket for the Brooklyn show.
Whoa!
And yeah, let me give you a fight because I have nothing witty to say.
All right.
About Ukraine.
I mean, that's tough.
Other than promoting your guys' show.
Thank you.
I wrote this down like last week or 2 weeks ago when they were on the show.
Okay.
We got Kristen Sinema versus Mika Brzezinski and Joe Manchin versus Joe Scarborough.
Sinema versus Mika. It's a Morning Joe versus the terrible two of the Democrats, and Joe versus Joe. All right. Manchin's going to win versus Scarborough. I mean,
yeah, I'm taking both senators.
I think I'm taking both senators too. I mean, Sinema is like all about, biking and stuff like that. She seems to be in good shape. She's also nuts. So I think, I always take that into account. I think Mika's a little more like, I mean, I'm not trying to say she's subservient.
High society.
But also like she allows Joe, her husband, to like really talk over her a lot, and not saying that that's, sometimes men just do that. But I think maybe she's a little more passive. So I'm going with both senators.
Well, I don't know. See, Mika's got the old Brzezinski family, wiliness to her. So she might be difficult to. I'm looking at the ages. Sinema is a little bit younger too, so I mean, it is tough. It is tough to take. Yeah, I'll take Sinema, and I'll go with.
What's Mika Brzezinski's height?
They're both about 5'5", 5'6". And I'll go with Joe Scarborough for reasons I don't want to joke about publicly, but there's.
Will you tell me later?
Well, there's a rumor about him. And
the conservative rumor?
Yeah.
The Trump one?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I didn't just incorporate
right,
that.
Now I need to know. All right, well, Alex, thank you so much for coming to the live show, and other people should join you, hopefully. Tickets
Take
are
care. Have a good
running
weekend.
out. Yes, have a good weekend. All right, guys, that is the final call of the week because we want to get to some clips, then get out of here. Hanging up the phones. Or maybe I shouldn't have done that because people listen. Oh, well. Sorry, everybody. I'm turning on the voicemail. Poet laureate of Beverly Hills, Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be a czar, please. Matt's Bong. I am shilling for State Department by shaming MR and other left media by placing responsibility of the well-being on their viewers in Ukraine on them is so disgusting, especially when they could spend their time going after left outlets that are blaming Ukraine for the conflict and continue to spew pro-Russian propaganda. It's courageous to reject the State Department narrative, even if it happens to be one that didn't lie to us. Lastly, solidarity with anti-war protesters in Russia. Yes. White communists. Emma and Matt, your analysis of the Ukraine situation and imperialist left punching is great. Sam and Jay Garofalo endured similar bad faith attacks even from the left when they opposed Iraq war fever. Political inclination aside, Americans are marinated from infancy in the settler colonial doctrine of American exceptionalism. This is the same problem which affects the left in Israel. Good point. Like the conditioning of white supremacy, it takes real vision and moral courage to push back against conditioning, and I admire your principled stand currently against Putin's imperialism, but also against American imperialism. Thank you for the nice remark.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is not easy for the left. I mean, World War I is a famous example of that.
Yes. All right, let's do some more clips. You have anything you want to get to in particular, Matt, Bradley?
Maybe Bobby, but I don't think we're going to do that on the show.
Which one?
Nothing.
Okay. You're being so mysterious today.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Do we want to do a CPAC check-in?
Let's do a CPAC check-in.
Is this the fight? Oh no, never mind. Sorry. Yeah, I'll put that in the Slack too. But what is this from CPAC?
There's a lot. We
can start with Ted Cruz's intro.
All right. Was that? This is his sign off or his sign in? Okay, let's do sign in then sign off. All right. So Ted Cruz, this is how he entered CPAC. Let's see. Let's rank his intro versus his outro. Here he is going to CPAC, out to applause from the crowd there, and his remark on, you guessed it, they're masking.
This is music.
They can't use like any real rock music.
God bless CPAC.
Fair use music for Ted Cruz.
What an amazing sight. Thousands of patriots and not a damn mask in sight.
Oh, man. Yeah, spitting into each other's mouths. All right, so he hit on the masking right to start off, and now here's his sign off. Because Ted Cruz is a man of the people, and he can relate to the common folk. He watches sports too, right? I mean, that's obvious. Nah, it's sarcasm.
Find me one person on planet Earth who doesn't know what "Let's Go Brandon" means. And not just in red states. How many of you saw at the New England Patriots game in Boston the entire crowd chanting "Let's Go Brandon"? Yeah. That is powerful. A wave is coming. We are taking our country back. We are standing up to power. We are defending liberty. We are defending the Constitution. We are defending the Bill of Rights. And together, we will save this great nation. God bless you.
Some more fair use music because no one will agree to let their music be used.
Fair use Owl City, please.
Yep. Bye. So Boston, notoriously not filled with right-wingers and racists. This is like, damn, what liberal Boston.
Suburban Boston also.
Right.
Isn't Foxborough like halfway between Providence and Boston, actually?
Yeah, I mean, it's what? It's like 30 minutes outside of Boston, 40 minutes. I've never been to that stadium and never want to go. But regardless, I love when he tries to like put on this persona too. It's
a bit gravelly.
Yeah.
Alex Jones gravel in there.
Right. I mean, it's so premeditated, and he already knows what he's gonna like hit him with the COVID denial and then leave with "Let's go, Brandon." What are the odds that he actually watched that Patriots game? Very little.
Oh yeah, but saying "Let's go, Brandon" is very powerful.
And everyone, find me one person in the world that doesn't know what "Let's go, Brandon" means. I went to
I could
Laos.
walk outside.
Yeah, right. Say it to just somebody on the street. Normal people don't know what the "Let's go, Brandon" means.
Like, okay, a fair amount of people know what it means, but like everybody, like that's like saying everybody knows what FDT meant after Trump was. No.
Speaking of Brandon, could we briefly check in with Ron DeSantis?
Yes, but let me just make this one point more about "Let's go, Brandon," because it's so silly to me how they think they're being so edgy, and like yet they're so afraid to say the word "fuck."
Exactly. Yeah.
And, like they're talking in code.
It's powerful to use euphemisms.
It's powerful to be afraid of the F word. Damn, I mean, I can't get over how like they think that they're being slick about it, but but you can't curse. It's not right. All right, Ron DeSantis. Hold on, let me quickly bring up my sheet. Gotta be quick. Right below. Oh, it's not. Okay. No context that we're implementing a segment in which either Matt or Bradley give me a clip called
Flying Blind.
Flying by the no, it's Flying Blind, not by the seat of my pants. God, I'm mixing these things today. Here we go. DeSantis.
And so in times like these, there is no substitute for courage. Having the courage to stand up against things like cancel culture, having the courage to reject corporate media narratives, having the courage to take on institutions like big tech, having the courage to stand in the way of the Brandon administration.
So now you can't say Biden?
What the heck? Oh my God.
Did you know that Biden in the UK like really is a slur? They're just being politically correct. Yeah.
This is like high school. It is so immature. Like it reminds me of
immature.
Like sort of pig Latin games or those sorts of things, right? Like just inside jokes and you're just winking at each other. I'm trying to think, like, did liberals quite do this? Because a lot of this is like the way they talk about Biden's mental state was just the way that a certain type of liberal was talking about Trump's mental state to the up to like invoking the 25th Amendment and that sort of thing. Like they just copy what was run 4 years ago. Charlie Kirk does this a lot too. But I mean, this is just—it's so infantile.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand.
We have another clip from the halls of CPAC. Yeah. So this is there's I don't know exactly who these guys. I think David Clements was the guy who he protested like a mask mandate and lost a job as a professor. And then there's another guy here who's running for office.
Okay.
And
by the way, is it a coincidence that CPAC is happening in Orlando and Sam is in the same city?
Is it in Orlando?
Yeah.
It's in Orlando.
Sam's a guest speaker.
Yeah. So here, I mean, so what you'll hear here is one guy. This is a fight between right-wing, media opportunists.
Okay.
And one guy accusing the guy in the red of not knowing what the word common law means. And then
Jesus,
another guy,
so fucking dorky.
Another guy saying that you accuse me of being Antifa. So here's this.
Oh, great.
And we know, I'm not allowed. David Jose destroyed you. You didn't know the definition of common law. Come on, man. You guys going? You're friends. You don't know the definition of common law. How are you an attorney and you don't know that? So I got it on video. It does work. It's a thing that no one wants. It does. Well, why no one wants? Oh, really? You're in the Dell Symposium on stage telling people we need to use affidavits and notices and teach a state legislature. You're full of it. You're full of it. Yeah, you did. It's all of it. Everybody saw that, right? You watched it. You're seeing this. Did you watch that? I'm the one that you claimed to attacking it. You're right. You're right. You called me Shoot.org. You called me Antifa. Oh, yeah, exactly. Who are you? You might be. No, I'm the one you might be. And we know.
So this feud apparently has been brewing.
Just to give a little bit of context, the guy in the suit jacket was the guy who put his Richard Barnett, who put his
Josh Barnett or Richard?
Wait a second here. Richard. Oh, did I get the wrong? Oh, Josh Barnett. Richard Barnett is the capital 6 guy with the foot. So who's Josh Barnett? I'm trying to find.
I'm trying to figure this out. I guess this was a different feud that David Clements was in.
Yeah, Clements has been mixing it up with people.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, given the fact that he's like knowingly fighting with another guy in front of a bunch of cameras, it's basically just saying, "Come here, I'm putting on a show. Let's go."
Josh Barnett is running in Arizona's 7th congressional district, which is like a deep blue district that Ruben Gallego represents.
Okay, so it's a candidate, and Clements is...
He's a New Mexico professor who defied COVID-19 mandates.
Gotcha. So. And he's been outspoken about election integrity. Who was the one on the side of the saying like, you don't even know what common law is? Which one was that?
That was Josh Barnett.
Okay, that's the dorkiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I love a guy saying you don't know what common law, the definition of common law, and then a guy saying, dude, you're fringe. That's a great fight.
Yeah, right.
An absolute grifter brawl.
A guy who's absolutely fringe himself, like a sort of D-list CPACer calling somebody else fringe, and he probably didn't know the definition of common law, and he's a professor. That's funny.
It's just like the most like specific like branding fight between minor conservative influencers. Like,
see, this is why the right
vote is better
always,
than this
there's
shit.
so much infighting on the right. This is why the right never gets anywhere. It's because of all the infighting.
I know, right?
I'm joking. I feel like there's a lot of people that say that about the left, and I just think like infighting is a perpetual part of politics, and not the sign that of why things are failing or succeeding.
Yeah. Lionel Hunts, since these conservatives were never cool in high school, they behave like what they think alpha males with the maturity of an 11-year-old would. Yeah. Metaphor mixologist, I want to wipe baby Putin's bottom. All right. Bourbon socialist. This radio. I already read that actually. Dr. Gus, thanks a lot for the psychic pain. I had avoided that lib video all week. Sorry. Cringe eater. Emma, as a journalism student, I must say these cringe videos get viral and actually encourage such dimwits to do more of it because we watch it and share it. How difficult is it to ignore it and act like it didn't happen? Why talk about the cringy stuff and make it more viral and give it the attention seekers what they want? I don't know, because like we do this on the show and it's fun.
Because it's a fun half, yeah.
The fun half. I mean,
we're not only propagandists. People, give us a little.
Yeah, right. We're not just like paid off by the Russian government here, and also the State Department, and also NATO, and also MSNBC, and also the Democratic Party. Yeah, those. I mean, that's just like.
Got too many revenue streams. My bank.
I know. I've been keeping the books, and like we might need to just kind of narrow in a little bit more. Tojo's bald head. Russia Grand Prix canceled. Football Champions League final moved out of Russia, and Russia suspended from Eurovision. Yes, and I saw that one of the teams in the KHL, the hockey league in Russia, which is like there was a Finnish team that was participating in that league. I'm trying to find the name of it right now. Where did it go? Oh,
it was a Jokerit.
Jokerit, yeah, the Helsinki. It's like a Helsinki team that also played in the Russian league. They played since 2014. They were in the playoffs and they withdrew. So there's they got a. I don't know why they aren't in La Liga, but regardless, I think that's the name of the Finnish hockey league. I only know that because the Rangers have a Finnish player and that's where he played. Spensky, China 100% expected this, LOL. Putin and Xi ironed out the details on how to steal Russia from sanctions when they met at the Olympics. Is that confirmed? I mean, I think that they've developed a relationship which would cause them to like not publicly weigh in and behind the scenes probably develop some kind of deal. I mean, if you can find corroboration on that report, let me know. Between the 101 and the 5, I'm worried that Jackson is the bluff pick to say he went with the more liberal pick only to be rejected and ultimately go with Childs. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think the reason that she even is in the DC Circuit Court position is because they wanted to platform her for the Supreme Court. So this has been in the works for a while.
And Manchin and Graham voted for her appeals court nomination. So it's not as if she was like a divisive nominee at the time anyways.
Yeah. I think that that's going to be used against them. Not that they haven't been hypocritical before. Amy Goodman is Bay 24. I'm loving the TYT TMR crossovers. Love pretty much everything you guys do. Please keep up the amazing work. Amazing. Thank you. Redefining skepticism. Emma Matt, sorry, but you have been continuously said we should be skeptical. Being skeptical of saying, be careful of the source of information, check the sources and don't trust them, but it is not what most of us did, which is to exclusively day us. And NATO went to war. They are hungry warmongers and intelligence sources just want to extend hegemony. You were not fair and balanced in giving takes. This is the real issue, not skepticism. I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, right in again.
Yeah. It's like unlike anything I've ever seen this week.
But I'm not really sensitive to this. I gotta say, you can try, but you're not really getting anywhere. I don't think it's a mystery why people were saying what they were saying about Western intelligence. Like, I think it's fairly obvious, and I think it's not something. I'm more worried about an overcorrection than an undercorrection there.
All right, let's do one more clip and then a few more IMs, and then we will get out of here.
So Jim Brewer?
We could.
Also, this Eric Bowling trucker clip is pretty funny.
Okay. Let me you know what? Screw it. We're doing Jim Brewer. Screw it. All right. Jim Brewer doing his stand-up routine on another one of Clay Clark's
Oh, I hope he has new material.
Reawaken America tour. Yeah. I would guess that like he's really re-examined the fact that his what was it, the chicken? What was the name of the
Giles Goat Boy was a postmodern novel. What was it? Was it Goat Boy? Okay, all right.
No, it was no. His last Reawaken stand-up routine was him being a chicken or a cockatoo. But he sounded like a pterodactyl, and I was like, that's not what a cockatoo sounds like. But the audience ate it up. Maybe he'll change his material and will no longer scream like some sort of ambiguous animal, but I doubt it.
Release the Omicron and let them know it doesn't even matter if they're vaccinated.
He's just laughing at the mannerism.
Like we're in an Avengers movie. The Omicron is coming! The Omicron is coming!
Alright, so this is Godzilla.
Put your grandmother back in the basement! Quickly! Get the children away from everyone! It's the Omicron! He's breathing on everyone and no one's dying!
2,000 deaths a day.
You see them panicking.
Look at that audience is loving it.
Running to the
Comedy
screens.
fans.
What do we do now? Joe Rogan's misinformation. Joe Rogan's misinformation. Joe Rogan's misinformation.
Woo!
Now, pause it quick. Let's do a test of the information we just received. Based on the information you just...
It's comedy, you idiot.
Well, but let's take this as information. Based on what you just learned from Jim Brewer there, epidemiologist, comedian, do you think that more people have died here from Omicron or from Delta? You would assume probably Delta, right? Well, it's actually the other way around. More people died from Omicron.
Yes.
Because of... in large part because of not under vaccination. And I'm not saying that is all because of medical misinformation by media opportunists like the people who appear on Joe Rogan's show. I think a lot of it is because of our medical system, but a fraction, and probably a significant fraction, is because of the media environment we have that misleads people for money.
You probably want to put your grandma in the basement. I'm a comedian too.
It is funny though that like they do this, right? When comedians make this shift, it's because they're like confined from doing these great jokes that they could be doing, right? But then when they actually make this pivot and should be freed up to follow their comedic genius wherever it leads them, it's just this
Where
sort of
does it
stuff,
lead them?
and then complaining about the people that don't come to their shows anymore.
It leads them back to the Reawaken America tour. That was what it's called. That's what it's called. Damn. Like, I mean, he's really got nothing new.
Wait, where is this? Like, what's the setting here? Can we just cut through a little bit?
I mean, I don't know.
Like, do we know? I mean, can you just maybe play it a little bit more, or is it done? Oh, it's
no. There's still a little bit more.
Like, I'm trying to figure out what are they in, like? They're not in a stadium or anything like that, or even like a theater. It's like a conference room.
Yeah, so according to the website, this was the 17th and 18th of February, Canton, Ohio.
Oh,
not sure where though.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
Just play the rest.
War in Russia! War in Russia! War in Russia! Quick, look at the other ring of the circus!
That didn't age well.
Do you see what fools they are?
It's all manufactured, man. So, like, what's the implication there that war in Russia is meant to distract from like the Omicron not killing anybody?
If the global elites that Jim Brewer was worried about are capable of coordinating not only like a fake, and this is all like, I don't believe this, just YouTube censors, but a fake virus and a fake vaccine and a fake war in Russia, they're not idiots. Like, they're pretty fucking capable, actually.
I just like, it's just the bunch of a lot of gain on the mic, a lot of blowing out the mic. Right? Because and then that over
That's doing comedy.
It overwhelms the senses, and then they're like, oh,
stimulus.
I don't get what's going on right now.
But it's very stimulating.
Yeah, right. In more ways than one. No, hopefully not. But that room is hell. All right, that will be our final clip of the week. We are going to read like 10 more IMs and then get the out of here. Poet laureate of the Bible Belt. I was just in Eastern Ohio / Western Pennsylvania due to the passing of my father-in-law. The political ads for upcoming primaries for Senate and governor in those states are completely off the rails nuts. Shofar for the good man, a Dutch socialist sympathizer for Mr. Gerrit Core. Not sure what you mean, but... Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, shofar for your dad. Sorry. We'll figure out a way to get the soundboard over here at some point. Thames Darwin, and I'm so sorry about the loss, your loss. Thames Darwin, Ted Cruz psyched about Let's Go Brandon cheers in Massachusetts because, as we know, Boston doesn't have any racists. You're stealing my point. Amanda.
No offense, Boston. We love you, and I can't wait to come and deliver the top 10 base statements from Bostonians at the live show.
I do like Boston. I mean, I do definitely
I've been to Salem, and I really like that. Was an amazing experience. So I'm excited to go to Boston.
Yeah.
Buy tickets.
Matt, you want to do the Freedom Trail where you correct all of the lore about founding fathers, which is also a 30 Rock song?
I'm actually going to do that, and I'm ashamed to say because it was in the video game. Oh, I'm blanking. What's the video game? Wow.
All right.
I can't. Mass Effect? No. Fallout.
Fallout. Crimea River. All right. IAMs are full of neocon hawks. I don't really know where that's coming from. It's like there must be some crossover with our audience, somebody who's like very much disagreeing with us. I really don't even know. Hard apple Seder. Peter Ducey needs to be pied in the face and pantsed in front of his father on a squeezeback ad on CNN during Ukraine coverage. Did you guys see that like Applebee's ad that popped up after air sirens? Yeah. It was like, and a little bit of chicken fry. And that song, which I didn't even realize was written in the wake of 9/11 as like a way to drum up patriotic sentiment. So.
The cold beer on a Friday night song.
Yeah, it sucks.
Turn the radio on.
Yeah, it's like that song "Hey Soul." I'm now 1 day old since I learned that was like meant to be about a black woman. Hey Soul Sister. My sister sent me some TikTok about it, which is really offensive, and that song is like the worst song I've ever heard too. So now I hate it even more.
What song?
Hey Soul Sister by Train.
Oh, I mean Train. I can't think of that song off the top of my head, but I'm sure I've heard it way too many times, like at like mall over mall speakers. I mean, Train is an incredible, cultural artifact because it is the most. It's the
blandest band,
the most inoffensive and offensive music at the same time.
Yeah, right.
I think they're industry plants.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would guess that like they almost look like they were put together like by the same people that put together Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's like
completely manufactured. Except just
Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, right. Imagine Dragons strikes me more as like a Nickelback thing. Anyway. And I will admit that I liked them in high school, but I've learned. God, why did I admit that? Devoid reality. How did Goat Boy ever get on SNL? Oh, right. They were the shittiest years of SNL, and that's saying something. Yeah.
That's the thing about Jim Breuer is like, I thought he was funny when I was 8 because that's the frequency his sort of comedy operates on.
Yeah. He's just like, I mean, Adam Sandler does that, like, slapsticky shit way better. For example.
Yeah. At least more lucratively.
More lucratively. Do you know how much money that dude's made?
Yeah.
And he's not a shock that he's a Republican. Lionel Hurts, Matt, Emma. Oh wait, I already read that. Tojo's bald head, drops of Jupiter in Emma's hair, and all caps. Yeah.
Drops of Jupiter. I might just have to walk home and see if I like veer into traffic.
Just stand in the middle.
Flatbush Avenue, take me away.
Train, stop revealing that. For you, Train Boy. Train is a horrible band, and it's a shame they're named after such a beautiful concept. All right, that's 6. 4 more. The Satkison. Don't feel bad about liking Imagine Dragons. It was Dave Matthews Band tribute band for about 5 years, and I fucking hate Dave Matthews. Oh, you were in a Dave Matthews tribute band for about 5 years, and you hate Dave Matthews. Okay.
The first CD I ever had burned for me, I didn't have a CD burner, but my neighbor did. I'm like, oh, can you burn me something? And what I burned was the Nickelback album with "How the Hell Did We Wind Up Like This?" That song. So. Oh
yeah,
let's do it on the bus.
What was on that initial, like I had my first burn CD, and it was like the it's been 1 week since you looked at me. That was on that.
Bare Naked Ladies. That's
yeah,
funny,
right.
Because it's kind of like rap. I don't know why that got so popular.
People just got like excited that they could say all the lyrics, and,
yeah, exactly.
And right. It was just, it's like it's an American Pie effect.
Baby Got Back for white people. If Baby Got Back already isn't for white people.
Baby Got Back is good. Is it? No. All right, congratulations.
It's fun.
I got that might have been on that mix too. Congressional baseball fan. Is Ted Cruz a real life righteous gemstones character? A family with a secret past, a loser son failing up, and all that horniness, I mean corniness, just out there on display. The world must suck. Might suck, but at least we can still laugh at something. I agree. 2 more.
Gates is sort of gemstone-y.
Matt Gates.
Yeah.
Does it take place in Florida?
Bama or Georgia or something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. 2 more. I'm trying to find ones I haven't read yet.
The chat is doing 1 week now.
They're just saying the lyrics. It's amazing. Damn. I've already read these. Maybe I'll go to the bottom here. Roganomics. Hey, Emma, as a longtime listener, I get disappointed when you don't want to see people in your own circle be accountable. You don't listen to Rogan regularly, but you have reacted to his dumb takes and misinformation. But when Hassan has been spewing, oh God, war porn on Twitch, for more than a week, you just say you don't watch him and that his intentions and that's it. He is increasing his influence and bit for the good.
Sorry, but like the extent that I've seen Hassan, he's been apologizing for the unfortunate tweet of saying Russia's absolutely not going to invade, and he shouldn't have tweeted that, and he's apologized for it.
What's the war porn that he's been tweeting out?
Yeah, like I think like
broadcasting?
Look, I think there should be.
I don't watch streams. I don't know anything about Twitch.
Yeah,
like please.
The general advice is I think people should have sensitivity about how they use this stuff for attention. But like I have seen Hassan make an apology for that tweet. I'm not sure what your issue is.
Like I don't know who's drumming up like this Hassan thing. Like I'm not interested in like petty fighting in between like streamers that I don't even watch or have a grasp of what their content is.
And
so,
honestly, like these sort of characterizations,
I only know Hassan like from work, and I also know him to be more pretty ideologically aligned with us. So I trust that he's doing a good thing.
And I mean, I'm not going to respond to characterizations that don't include any of the actual subject matter. That is just your opinion that he's doing war porn.
To the IMer, it's my birthday tomorrow. Present from you to me. Go outside, please.
Bradley, are you going to go outside? What's your plan?
No, it's cold. It's going to be cold tomorrow.
It's going to be cold. It was horrible weather today. Yeah.
Drinking.
Good. Yes, everybody, please wish Bradley a happy birthday because that's tomorrow. And the final IM of the day or week. Sports talk about Ovechkin. Yeah. So I picked this one because last night the Rangers beat the Washington Capitals. Ovechkin is one of the best hockey players of all time, but like very much I think Putin officiated his wedding, or it was the other way around. Very close together, and yeah, it's problematic for sure. I am proud to say that the New York Rangers employ Artemi Panarin, who is not only fun and good, but is a Putin critic and actually faced a ton of risk to his safety to actually speak out against Putin. So that aged pretty well.
That's just a news story I want to highlight before we go.
Sure.
Independent.co.uk. Britain fails to set up refugee route as thousands flee Ukraine. This is something that like is I don't want to overemphasize this because I am wary of jumping into the chorus of saying like the solution to this is just harder and harder sanctions, but I do think it's worth pointing out that one of the obstacles to sanctions is the Russian money that controls large parts of particularly the Tory party. And I think like that they simultaneously have that issue and not be accepting refugees. Like any place not accepting refugees is an abomination right now, and it's horrible that we wouldn't be doing above and beyond what we can to help folks that are caught in the crossfire here.
We need to help Afghan refugees and Ukrainian refugees and admit them with like barely any red tape, no red tape. Yeah, wave them through. All right, guys, thank you for watching this week, even though we got a little spicy.
A lot of people off.
Yeah. Don't know how, but this is where we ended up. Still think it was a great week. We will see you on Monday. Sam will be back. Hallelujah, if you were missing him. And it will be nice to have him back too.
With the benefit of he gets to gestate and marinate in his takes. We have to react live. So
I'm mad about that. Sam got to not get any heat this week because he's gonna be able to just be like, I knew they were gonna invade all along. I was right. Yeah. Anyway, but he'll probably have a lot of takes on Monday. I'll get to speak for 10 seconds most likely, but that's I've had all this week, so I understand. All right, see you guys tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid.